this guy I forgot to
Um,
Thanks.
Yep. So that would be done with signage to warn drivers of the shared use path. They also clarified that the units, the workforce units would, about 3/4 of those would be dedicated to workers earning less than the area median income. That had been a question, so that's all on the record. We have a preliminary A&R plan, just a formal plan. That's the same as what was proposed, but this is a more formal plan. The applicant has provided data related to the nitrogen mitigation. They have shown, based on installations in Barnstable, that the proposed nitro denitrifying septic system can achieve nitrogen output levels of less than 5 or about 5 over the 13 installations there. So based on the 5 milligrams, they've revised their nitrogen calculation and proposed a formal nitrogen mitigation plan. That would be to install 14 or upgrade 14 systems in the watershed. And that would be done in a sort of phased approach, which the commission will need to discuss. Let's see what else. We have a report that the applicant provided by a separate party looking at the environmental impacts of various exterior building materials, including polyvinyl chloride, which is proposed for this project. And also we've added other information to the record indicating other sources of information about environmental impacts of those housing materials. I'm not sure if we need to go over the mitigation proposal for nitrogen in any more detail. Essentially, they would provide money to the Resource Inc., which does program management, and the Resource Inc. would oversee the installation of units. Half of the total money for the 14 septic systems would be provided upfront. And then over the next 2 years, the Navigator septic system would be monitored to see exactly how much nitrogen is coming out of that. And then based on that, the mitigation plan would be upgraded and the remaining systems would be installed. So that's it for new information.
Thank you. Since the information regarding the nitrogen mitigation just came in the last 30 hours or so, and the public, I suspect commissioners may not have had an opportunity to completely digest it, and obviously the public hasn't had an opportunity to review or to comment on it. I am not going to close the public hearing tonight. I will continue it to another date, and if no one has any comments about the nitrogen mitigation issue, at that time I'll close the public hearing without any testimony, so we can keep it moving. But we have in our procedures a rule that we don't have to consider anything that is submitted less than 3 business days before the hearing, and this came in just as I said yesterday, and I can understand that happens, but the public should have an opportunity to review things and comment on them. That said, I'm not suggesting we necessarily have to have testimony in the future if the public doesn't say anything. Fred, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just had a question for Alex. What's the significance of the preliminary A&R plan?
The applicant, I think, just wanted us to have that on the record. They also pointed out that that alone would have required a concurrence review, which isn't entirely relevant, but they just wanted us to have that. And because the project will involve subdividing the property, with half going to the hospital and half going to Navigator homes.
Okay, I was just a little puzzled there.
Is Sherry here? Sherry Casso? Is she on the, I don't see her, but that doesn't
No,
matter.
she's here. I just saw her a second ago.
Sherry, do you have any thoughts with regard to I know it just came in and you just had a chance to look at it today, with regard to the nitrogen mitigation proposal? Or do you, you don't have to comment on it. You can comment on it at the next session of the public hearing, but if you are ready, we can.
That they plan on putting in the 14 systems and possibly doing it in a phased
Yeah.
approach to, I think we should give them a time frame, 2 to 3 years that they put the first 7 in. And then after 2 to 3 years of monitoring their system, then they have to put the others. They could keep the money for the other systems in escrow. And that way, if the system was performing fantastically, maybe it would reduce their mitigation.
Well, we'd also have to see what the results are from the mitigation systems that are in, because they may not reach the same level.
Right.
From information that just came in a few minutes before this hearing, a couple hours before this hearing, I understand the nitro vendor suggests that he's confident that he will get with a site-specific design an average effluent of total nitrogen less than 5 milligrams per liter. But
I did almost. I'm like half paying attention.
mute those folks, please.
It looks like Chris Alley also might have a response to the nitrogen question.
Okay, but some of the mitigation systems may not necessarily reach that same level. So
Right.
we'll have to think about that, and we may condition it differently than the applicant is proposing, but that's it's something to discuss. Chris, if you want to say something, go ahead. I don't see it.
Doug, I was only going to say in the proposal, just as you just pointed out, the proposal also contemplates the monitoring of the mitigation systems themselves and incorporates into the suggested analysis how well the mitigation systems are doing, as well as how the project system is performing. That is incorporated into the proposal.
And we'd also need to know that the project system, the project is fully occupied. It wouldn't do much good if, for example, the skilled nursing facility only had 25 or 30 beds out of the 66 beds occupied. We'd need to know the full amount. So it's going to take some work on that, but
That's all, been incorporated into the proposal.
Yeah, so I invite the public to review that information and commissioners look at it. If you have any questions about it, please get written questions to Alex so that he can get them to the applicant. And hopefully we can address the nitrogen issue promptly at the continued session of this public hearing, or maybe not even at all if there are no questions. Are there any commissioner questions about any of the new materials? Okay, Ben.
Yeah, I have a few questions. Let's start with the grading. Alex, you talked about working with the natural grading. Is there a plan that reflects that?
I believe the latest site plan includes the removal of the retaining walls. I'd have to check on that.
Yeah, there was a grading plan, and I'm trying to find it again. I saw it earlier on the website, and I can't remember what the date was of it, but I'm not finding it now. I don't know if, was it removed from the website, or is it being
It might be
updated?
in the civil engineering plan set.
From 9/22.
Yeah. I'm looking at it now.
Because there's a significant amount of grade across that site. And I would like to understand what they mean by working with the natural grade. We need a plan that shows that.
Doug,
So,
if you want,
Doug-
Ed Pesci could speak to that.
Yeah, Doug, this is Ed Pesci and Ben. I'm the project civil engineer for that. So the latest set of plans dated in July, not too long ago, the revised set that actually Alex showed a portion of a few moments ago, was a result of our discussions and negotiations with the Natural Heritage Program. So we had to move some buildings around and tighten some of the layout so that we would not have more fragmented endangered species habitat to remain on the property. So the entire design in basically the back half of the site had to be changed. Yep, and Alex is bringing this up, I believe. So what's shown here is the actual grading and drainage plan that we have
That's
proposed.
that's the previous.
I'm sorry, yes, that's the previous one, correct.
Oh, right, sorry, hang on.
And that previous one kind of was more of a longer and more extended to the south layout. This latest one consolidates it, but still maintains separation distance from the western neighbors and abutters. We wanted to make sure we respected a good setback there. And there's the newest layout. And this grading and drainage plan shows how the stormwater management facilities will be located and shows how the grading would be done. It does require some balancing of cuts and fills. In fact, it is purposely graded this way to balance the cuts and fills so that we would not have to import material to the site. So prior to this, we did have in the initial design last September, we did have a significant retaining wall area around part of the apartment buildings. In this design, we were able to provide the right grading scheme, a different grading scheme in a more consolidated footprint. I guess they were both consolidated, just one was longer, this is shorter to the south. So this is doesn't extend as much into the property area to the south, which the natural heritage director, natural heritage program director, the lead biologist had directed us to come up with that option. So during the months of June and July, we negotiated those changes.
Right. So I think, Alex, characterizing this as working with a natural grade is not fully accurate. As you can see, they're regrading pretty much everything inside the limit of work. Is that?
That was just the applicant's statement, but I think the idea was that using more of the existing topography.
But there is within inside the limit of work, there's no existing topography that's going to remain as it is today. Is that correct?
The answer is yes. That's why it's called the limit of work. That's why it's the limit of disturbance.
Yeah, but I just want that to be clear.
I mean,
I had
there
another.
is some. Excuse me. I'm sorry. There is some in the north that will remain relatively consistent, and there's some spots around the site that will be relatively consistent, but it's really around the fringes of the site.
Right. I had another question on food for the nursing homes. Each block has a kitchen in it. Are those kitchens designed to provide food for the meals, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Are those kitchens accessible by the residents, or is there going to be professional staff that uses those kitchens to provide food, or is food being provided offsite and then brought to the homes?
I can answer that question. This is David McDonough, the President and CEO of Navigator Homes. And just to rewind for a minute for Ben, and obviously for seniors, we must have a surface area that is flat as a billiard table. Cannot have any topography shifts at all. You can imagine people with walkers and wheelchairs. So yes, the grading is required to accommodate the needs of seniors. And yes, food is both provided within the home, made in the home, from sources outside of the home.
I guess the question is do the residents have access to that kitchen facility where they prepare their own meals, or are the meals being prepared for them by staff?
It's a combination of both. As we may have remembered when we talk about the greenhouse project model, a core thesis of the model is a home-like setting. And by definition, if you're there and you want to cook your own meals, go for it. We obviously will have a staff that'll be preparing meals for people. So it's really up to the election of the resident elder of their capabilities and their desire, whether or not they like to cook something themselves, or more often than not, food will be prepared by the staff for them.
Because each home has its own kitchen facility, which is nice because then residents have access to that. But in in the case where the staff is providing the meals, are they being prepared at each home, or is there an offsite location in which they're being prepared?
Every house is independent and freestanding. So meals will be prepared in each home.
Okay, so each home will have a sort of, let's say the chef of each home will be preparing those meals for the residents of that home.
That is correct.
Okay. I would caution saying that the site is a billiard table. There is still quite a bit of grade from sort of the south to the north, but I take your point that it does need to be level and accessible. You also, in your answers, responded about paving options and potential for more permeable options, especially under parking spots. I can understand potentially the need for a smooth surface at the resident homes, but at the workforce homes where you have a more able-bodied community, potentially that's a place where more permeable surfaces could be used. Is that possible?
So if I may, Mr. Chair, and again, I'll try to answer that. So when I looked at this, the quick answer is, of course, it's possible, but it's also costly. And so we were trying to avoid excessive costs. And what does the permeable paver do, or permeable surface do? It allows infiltration. Well, it just so happens that the design for the stormwater management system is so robust, it collects, treats, and infiltrates 100% of the runoff. So it is still getting, you're still getting the benefit of that infiltration through the current design. So there was no net benefit, if you will, in my opinion. That's why we stuck with the lower maintenance and more conventional cost method of standard paving.
You mentioned treatment in there. Can you expand on that?
Oh, sure. Without opening up the plan again and going through it in a lot of detail, there is several best management practices that we propose. So first of all, deep sump catch basins. The second would be a water quality treatment unit. The third would be a sediment forebay. The third would be what's called a advanced drainage systems uses an isolator row subsurface fabric wrapped chamber system, so that the first row is wrapped in fabric and provides additional sediment treatment for any that gets past the previous best management practices. So it's actually a redundant system. It
What are you
exceeds the
treating?
requirement.
What maybe just to be clear, what would you be treating for?
You treat the pollutants that are in stormwater. Those are typically sediments and dirt, if you will, along with the other things that could possibly be in there, and some nutrients and so on. That's what the sediment forebay is there in the beginning of the detention basin to provide treatment for. It's a standard practice. It's following the best management practices in the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook.
All right, and then the one other question, and I brought this up before, were the materials on the exterior of the workforce housing being mostly vinyl based, almost entirely vinyl based. And there was a response back basically outlining that if we spend more money on the siding for the workforce housing, we wouldn't be able to spend that money on the care for our patients. I'm not sure I fully follow that. The care for the patients is being paid for either by the patients or by their insurance or by the federal government or some other entity. How is the hospital paying for care? If they were to build a higher quality, safer, less toxic exterior material housing for their workforce, how would that actually be taking away from money that would be using on patient care?
Denise, do you want to respond to that?
Sure. Thank you, Ben. So any extra cost that we add to an operation takes away from those expenditures that can be used for nursing salaries, physician salaries, all directly related to patient care. new services, supplies for patients. So, it's not a net zero game, Ben. You spend, we have a budget every year, and the more you spend, the more it goes against your budget. So, we try to keep our overhead costs really tight. So most of the money that we do generate, which by the way, not all of it is paid for. We give a fair amount of free care and charity care to those that can't pay or don't have insurance. We're required to do that by law, as well as several $1 million in community benefit, also required by the Attorney General's office as a not-for-profit. So we give a lot of free care. We have to still cover those costs. So every nickel added somewhere else without reimbursement, which this extra siding won't be reimbursed for, that cost has to come out somewhere else or something else gets sacrificed. Is that clear?
Yeah, that's a little helpful.
Thank you.
The other question is have you done an actual calculation to show what the increased cost would be if you were to use a less toxic siding?
Yeah, I'm gonna jump in there, Denise. I'm
Yeah,
just jumping
please
there.
do.
No, not definitively yet, Ben. And we will be, part of the site has it has the cement hardy board, which has been used on recent projects as well. We're still debating the cedar siding, some vinyl alternatives. This is still a part of, the discussion. And this is not a final answer. And the financial piece that we're speaking to is not the only consideration to this. So we take what you've said. And again, look, we understand the plastic argument. Then there's the we're going to chop down more trees argument to create more wood. It's a balance, right? And that's what we're trying to do. So I would just say, Ben, it's not 100%. We're not doing what you're saying. We've got to look at the big picture when we, formulate ultimately offers in the final project design to you.
Okay, thank you again.
And again, if I may, David McDonough, once again, ongoing maintenance costs are also relevant to the siding materials. And the siding materials we're talking about have lower maintenance costs, which is important to keep the overall cost of operations down. Thank you.
Yeah, it's worth doing some analysis on those costs. There's plenty of houses on the island that were built upwards of, at this point, almost 50 to 60 years ago that have the same wood siding in shingles that they had at the start. And so, proper construction processes also lower the cost of maintenance down the road, regardless of the material you use. So I think it's a tough one, but I would encourage you to review some of the documentation that's been added to the record on the health risks of using those types of materials.
And Ben, not to drag out the topic, but one other point, purely for the Navigator skilled nursing facility, our building design needs to be fully compliant with U.S. Department of Health and Human Services CMS division code. And they are hyper sensitive to anything that has any fire cause capabilities. And we've already been told, as much as we may like to have shingles, guys, don't even think about it. The sensitivity to both the federal government and the state government that needs to approve it for very valid purposes. Want to make sure that there is zero fire risk for our elders. So it's just another factor in the design components. Thank you.
Fire. This is a big topic, and you can go around on these things, and there's a lot to unpack. But the polyvinyl product as a fire risk is actually more dangerous than wood. When it ignites and when it burns, it releases dioxins, which is probably the most dangerous aspect of that material. So I think from a fire risk standpoint, there are other considerations that maybe the federal government haven't fully vetted out.
Yeah, and Ben, to be clear, we're not using polyvinyl on the skilled nursing facility.
No, I understand that. Yeah.
Okay. I think we've covered that issue. However, I do think, as Guillen's pointed out, that rather than just say, well, it's going to be more costly or it takes away from patient care, something in writing that gives you that tells us what you are actually going to use, And most of the beds in this project will not be the skilled nursing housing. So the Mr. McDonough's issue won't be as get us something in writing before the record closes, so that there's something to hang our hats on, one way or the other. Okay, so I see Michael and then Jay Grossman. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, Alex, can we put that site plan back up with the grading? I'd like to follow up on a couple of points my colleague just made. While you're doing that, I think it's important to differentiate the skilled nursing facility, the beds from the housing, and I believe the vinyl siding, which is in fact quite flammable, is not for the care facility, but for the housing. And therefore, the point that the federal government restrictions, it's a red herring. That's going to be a fire resistant material. We're talking about the housing, so let's not mix them up.
You're correct.
And
Thank you.
by the same token, I would say I've spent the last month with my siblings moving my elderly parents to a care facility, and I fully appreciate firsthand the need for a flat surface to wheel people around and a safe surface. The grading on this, particularly on both the top and bottom of the page, there's quite a lot of grade on it. So this is not, the whole perimeter of the site would not be a place where the concern for safe passage for seniors, that's irrelevant here. Is that true? Around the whole perimeter, it's too steep. So the argument given in writing that it has to be asphalt paving for the safety of the seniors is another red herring. Isn't that true?
I'll let Ed chime in there, but I'll let Ed.
Well, as I mentioned, first of all, we want to have the parking spaces in the perimeter road that's going to get the most use be asphalt. To put pavers down is cost prohibitive. It's unnecessary, and I don't think it's a valid, really a valid point over a permeable pavement system.
Okay, that's fine. Let's get the right answer then.
Yeah.
The safety of the seniors is not relevant. Is that correct?
Well, no, the safety of seniors for part of this paving, I think what we're.
Yes, but the majority of it, no. So let's just get the right answer.
I'll defer to you if you'd like. Sure.
All right. Okay.
As I said, you can do anything you want. It just costs something, and that was part of the concern I had was the cost, because we try to save our clients money when it comes to construction, and the permeable aspect of things is to provide infiltration. Well, it just so happens that the design calls for 100% infiltration of runoff. So the robustness of the design accounts for that, and I think we should get some credit for that.
Yes, and fair enough. And the engineering aspects of these are well handled. It is part of our job, however, to analyze the character, and I'm guessing that's not part of your calculation, nor should it. So that's why we're bringing it up. We respect that you have handled the runoff. The character issue is a different issue.
Well, can I just explain so you see it? Because and Michael, I don't know your background, so forgive me.
I'm an architect.
Okay, so what you're seeing on the top and bottom of the sheet is higher land. That's why it's sloping down, and those grades, while they look significant, are 3 to 1, very constructible. 2 to 1 is very constructible. 1 to 1 is iffy, but 3 to 1 is very constructible. What that means is for every 3 feet laterally, you drop 1 foot in elevation. So that's what that is. Those are 3 to 1 slopes, because I didn't want to worry about how it was going to be constructed. and whether it would be difficult to do
Get a
that.
message through.
I'm sorry, I
Sorry?
didn't hear that.
Whoever that was, let's let be called on before you say something, Tripp.
Okay, I simply object bringing in the safety of the seniors as a reason. I know you had good engineering reasons for doing.
Only in the center of the site, Michael, only in the center of the site.
I know,
where
but
the
you're
5 big-
referring to the paving over the entire site.
No,
and the
I
majority
referred
of
to the
this, that's
paving.
not relevant.
Let me clarify. The
Let's
main
move
entrance drive and the loop around the site, not feeding the duplex units in the front and not feeding the apartments on the left of this page, I believe should stay as asphalt, and the parking spaces in front of all the greenhouse homes should stay as asphalt to provide a level and stable surface. The other areas, yes, they could have a different surface. You could put, we could put seashells on the entrance to the duplexes. You know, we could do
and,
that.
and look, and to clarify, I agree with you. I object to the rationale that was given to us. Just
Understood.
don't bring the seniors in front of it when you have a different reason. And
Understood.
that's
Okay, I think the
Okay.
point's been made.
okay.
Yep.
One other point, at last month's meeting, you mentioned that the parking for the townhouses has to be in front of the townhouses because of grade. There's no grade there. They can go in between. True?
Nope, that's not what I stated in my written response. It was for the duplexes that face the street because of the grade. So
Yes, and could you point out the grade that's prohibiting placement of the parking so that it's not in the front of the houses?
So if you can see and just for everybody's edification, on the right-hand side of this picture, D1 through D4. And to the left of D1 through D4, the grade goes up again to the flatter area where the 5 greenhouse buildings are. So if we were to swap that, if we were to put parking behind the D1 through D4.
No, in between.
The grade doesn't allow for that very well. So what we did was we put them in between the buildings on the sides so that we have more of a streetscape. So that it would look like a streetscape from the
You
street.
put them in front, and that's not
No,
allowed.
I put them in the side, but I would say they're moderately. I mean, you know, you don't want to have them exactly in the front. So they're not. They're parked between the buildings. So, you know, I
If
didn't
these
want to
were
have
individual
people.
lots, that would be considered the front yard, and therefore not allowed by zone.
We can argue over semantics on that, sir, but I can only tell you that I wouldn't want my parking spaces directly beside my home so that people driving in could look into my window. I'd rather have them closer towards the front of the street, in between the units, and I thought that was an acceptable way. We all did. So
Okay, but at least the verbal answer was that it wasn't possible, and correct me if I misremember it, but it wasn't possible due to the grade behind the building. And I don't see this relevant because there is no grade in between the buildings.
So there's no grade between the buildings. I never said there was. But the grade behind them does go up towards the 5 greenhouse homes, the main loop.
Behind, yes,
It was not,
But-
but
but there's no reason to
advantageous
put the
them
parking in
behind it.
front of the buildings,
Right.
as the
So
majority of them are.
if you want to call it the front, I'm happy to call
I
it
do,
that.
yes.
I completely understand your point. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, Jay.
My question is for Denise. I just understood from the prior meeting what you were saying about the overall situation was that the Mass General Brigham system was providing the workforce and that it was the MVH responsibility to provide the housing. And I just wanted to understand if there was discussion about increasing the pay for staff, nurses, and physicians so that they could better afford the housing on the island, and whether this is, you know, a factor in the problem that we have overall.
Yeah, Jay, I don't recall saying that MGB is providing the workforce. We provide the workforce and we pay for the workforce here at Martha's Vineyard Hospital. The system has allowed major pay increases already. We do an annual cost of living raise, which for the islands already has about a what we call an island factor. So usually those cost of living increases are much more than the system overall. The other thing in account here is that the hospital is highly unionized, 2 unions, SEIU and M&A. So we are bound by labor contracts by which we have to are allowed to give increases. And those increases this past year and for the terms of the next contracts have been significant. So we have done a lot to create parity and also to raise salaries at times when other healthcare systems are laying off staff, freezing salaries. We have not done that. So our workforce is precious to us. We're doing everything we can to retain it, and raising funds for real estate to build these kinds of secure workforce housing is really critical to the attraction and retention of our great staff.
Okay, Ben.
Thanks.
Yeah, I want to go back to some of the grading and just to understand sort of, the grade at Edgartown Road is about 32, 33 feet. And if you look at the site, it heads up to 40 to 45 feet where the green homes are. So from the road, you're looking at a site that you're going to see that's higher than the road. And so I'm curious a little bit about what landscaping measures are being taken. I know there's some landscaping plans on the website, but they're older, they're related to previous layouts. So I'd like to be able to see how you're going to buffer the view from the road, because this is going to be a massive clearing along the road there where it once was just forest. And I think people are going to want to better understand how you might shield the immensity of the site from the road to preserve some of the land, some of the character of that road. So do you guys have an updated landscaping plan on this current layout?
Yeah, do you mind, Alex, can you bring up the rendering, and maybe Chris and Ed can speak to that when the rendering is up there? I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, we did do a lot of thinking, Ben, about what it would look like from the street, because we were asked that. In fact, we have this rendering of standing in the road and looking at the existing vegetation along the road we're trying not to disturb in front of the duplex units, and then the street going up the slight incline to the greenhouse homes. And around the perimeter road, I have a flat shoulder to be able to place a number of trees. And I know that Chris Horiuchi and her team have planned to show screen plantings along that side, and also on the top of the view, if you will, that we were looking at before, the western boundary where the abutters are. So this is a great view. So Chris, I think you're on the horn here too. Why don't you go ahead and discuss that?
Sure. So again, one of the important aspects of this was to preserve as much of the existing vegetation along the main road as we could. So I think some of these are actual trees in the rendering. Yes. It was prepared by the architects. And the idea of first of all, this entry view into our property, it's not a straight shot. It does have a slight curve to it. And so what we were able to do with that curve is to create some planting pockets, which will help to mitigate the views, not only of the duplex units, but also of the greenhouse units beyond. You're correct, there is a grade change in that. And again, we're hoping to capture our plantings, because they're at different elevations, to help work with screening those views as you proceed up the driveway. So you can kind of see in this rendering, I'm not able to point to it, but some of these tiers and these layers of planting. And that's our goal in this, is to try to layer some of our proposed plantings so that the views of the structures are going to be filtered views, not open views.
How wide were the entrances? You're going to have a view of all that up there.
I'm sorry, Doug. And you said how wide? Is that what you're sorry?
Yeah, not just the road, but you've got clearing on either side. I mean, that,
Right. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, there is the width of the road and then there are those, I don't know the exact dimensions. We can go kind of back to the plan and, you know,
Yeah,
Ed
the
can
roads-
Ed can show the dimension of like the first duplex unit to the road. If that's the question that you're asking, Doug.
yeah,
Yeah. So I don't know, Ed, in the plan, if you could
Yeah.
show or just estimate what the dimension is.
Chris, I have that. It's about the closest duplex unit to the sideline of the pavement of the road is about 95 feet. That's
Right.
duplex unit 2.
If you page up to sheet 3, I believe, or 4, right here. Now you'll see it's a 24-foot wide road. And you can see as you add the entrance road on the side, we cut the trees back a little bit to put some infiltration for stormwater management and also to grade next to the road. But we moved the buildings back a significant amount. If you zoom in on that, you can see how all the duplex units are a good setback from the road beyond the required 30-foot setback. So we're at 70 to 91, and D4 is even more, obviously over 100 feet. And what we tried to do is leave a finger of natural vegetation at the road between the edge of disturbance of the road and the bike path.
Chris, do you have a strategy for the planting the 3-to-1 slopes yet? I mean, I think that's where you're going to have the best opportunity to sort of mitigate. You know, if that's just a rolling lawn, it's going to be really something people's eyes catch. If it's those 3-to-1 slopes are planted out, I think that. So, do you have a strategy, or it'd be really nice to see, you know, at least a conceptual landscaping plan, sort of describing some of the concepts you're talking about.
So I think, you know, again, the areas that are being disturbed on the site will all be restored and with various strategies. The idea of the areas that are, you know, kind of I would say transitional from hardscape to you know, the existing woodland vegetation, whether it's along the road, whether it's along, you know, our side yards. Yes, I agree with you. Those are the areas that we're going to be focusing on for our native restoration.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that we don't want to see, or at least I don't want to see, is that you just end up with lawn everywhere, and you know, a spattering of trees, and then it's just constantly lawn maintenance in places where you don't need to have lawn.
Yeah, we were very specific in trying to focus our lawn, I would say grass areas, Ben, in areas that we're going to be managing, you know, in our pocket park, for example. But, you know, both, you know, from a maintenance standpoint, from a water use standpoint, you know, the intent for all of these transitional areas that we're talking about would be that they would be native. Any seeding would be for, you know, native grass, drought tolerant material. It's not intended to be something which would require irrigation, to look like lawn by any means, and frankly, to require a lot of maintenance.
what we're going to want to do, and you know this as well as anyone, Chris, is we will undoubtedly condition this for you to submit a final landscaping plan for review and approval by the land use planning at an early point, I imagine certainly before you get a CO. And given the complexity and the size of this project and the impact on the view from the Edgartown Road, I'm sure you'll be ready to give us an awful lot of detail and explanation, because I think land use planning will more than likely in this case than in others really go through it very thoroughly and won't approve it unless you've done your very best to minimize the impact, the visual impact, and covering the issues also that Ben's pointed out. But again, it'll go to land use planning almost certainly.
So Doug, could I just jump there? There is a landscape plan with a lot of detail in it and plantings, and it would be helpful, even in the meantime, if commissioners could take a look at that and point out specific things and we can address them as soon as possible, that would be great.
So can I also just make the point that, thank you, Alex, for bringing this up. Chris and her team adapted the previous design plan that they put together to the new layout that we were directed with our negotiations with the Natural Heritage Program. And I want to point out that there's very little managed turf area on purpose. The rest of it is meadow. It's a natural mix. So it's the light green kind of behind, it's easy to see in some of them if you zoom in a little bit, the light green behind all the 5 greenhouse buildings for the park is lawn, and there's some lawn around spacers between the parking space layout in front of every building, and there's a little bit of lawn in the center of the little cul-de-sac down by the duplexes, and there's a little bit of lawn in front of only the apartments. That's it. The reason was to minimize our use of fertilizer, so our nitrogen load would be reduced. So it's actually approximately an acre total on the entire site. Again, this whole site's 27 acres. There's only an acre, 43,000 square feet of managed turf, and that was done on purpose to try to reduce the requirement for nitrogen fertilizer.
Thank you. I'm not sure who was next. I don't know if it was Jim or Adam. So I'm going to assume it was Jim and then Adam, and I'll get to Linda and Kathy. Go ahead, Jim.
Adam was first, but I'll go. What do you happen to know what the distance to the hospital is from this site? Anybody? The reason I ask, I was wondering, is there going to be a shuttle service to the hospital from the site?
Are you talking, Jim, for employees?
Yes.
I don't, Denise can try. I know we have discussed it, the possibility of it. It's not set in concrete right now, but I don't know if Denise, if you want to add to that, but the topic has come up to consider it.
That is correct. We have talked about a shuttle bus, just like we have from the ferry to the hospital, but from the site as well to the hospital.
And I was hoping that there would be a lot of information about using bicycles to and from the site. What is it, like 5 miles maybe? Something like that?
Yeah, I would guess that's about right. Although my husband tells me my sense of direction is awful, but I think that's a good guess.
Because between there and the hospital, it's probably mostly bike path. And I was hoping that I didn't see any bicycle storage designated near the housing units.
They're there. They're on the layout and parking plans. They are there. We did discuss this at length during the traffic analysis, and I think it's probably in the record already that the VTA is planning to provide service to the site, at least on demand, and is considering, we have it letter in writing, considering making it part of their regular service, routine service. But we could certainly, looks like Chris Alley, I know you spoke to her on your own. And then the greenhouse folks are going to have their own minivan to shuttle, residents to various things that they may need to do, medical appointments and what have you.
Yeah, a couple things, Jim. It's about 5.25 miles by road to the hospital from the site. There is, as you pointed out, there's bicycle path the entire way, I believe, right from door to door. And we did talk to Angie Gompert at when we first filed with the planning board in Edgartown to discuss their incorporating a stop within the facility into their route. They said they would treat it similarly to what they do at Woodside Village, where it's not on every single run, but it might be on every other run. And then they would also, as Ed pointed out, be available for specific requests or on demand.
And if there is going to be a shuttle, small shuttle vehicle, it would be a perfect thing for an electric vehicle to to go that distance and back. And so that's just something to consider. That's it.
Okay,
I think most of my question got answered. I'd like to ask Ian, what is the process here with the town? You had several different meetings, public meetings with the town, planning board. Are there any issues that they raised that are not up before this commission? And why don't you just in a second, just tell the commission sort of the history and what's going to happen next?
Well, yeah, so they have been running sort of some concurrent, I don't want to call them hearings, just kind of update along the way here. We were supposed to have one, I think it was last week. Fred Mascola has been ill, so those have been kind of pushed off until he's back. So we've kind of just been keeping them up to date. They did, as you know, I guess maybe not our last hearing, the one before, they submitted some questions and some of their concerns, which we responded to both to them and also provided those to Alex. So those are in your materials. But, I think a lot of the same topics that you're bringing up are the concerns of the planning board. They wanted us to look into moving the entire property, and we gave them the reasons why that's not feasible. But aside from that, the neighbors' concerns and wastewater and the topics we're talking about kind of are the same concurrent issues. And obviously, once we process-wise, hopefully get through your end of it, we got to go back to the planning board before there's any finality to it. So but they have been in the loop, and we're back with them. I think I don't know the exact date, but we did get pushed a month to their next meeting.
Okay. Thank you. Then it's in the record, their initial comments and your answer to that.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Linda Sibley is next.
Yeah, I wanted to say something about lawn and fertilizer. If you're planting grasses that need fertilizer, you're planting the wrong grasses. I have a lawn around my house made up entirely of native grass volunteers, have had it for 40 years. As long as you keep it mowed, it's a respectable lawn. Does it look like a golf green? Absolutely not. It's more interesting than that. But anything that requires fertilizer here is a plant you shouldn't be planting. And that holds for the grass and the bushes and the trees. Just an opinion.
I think.
Can we go back to the one just quickly to the entry view that Chris was showing us before with the plantings? Because I know there are requirements for width, but I'm just wondering if there's any way of tucking that in closer so that it looks so much like a. And I understand the reason for the roads and all the, we all have to make compromises, but it just feels to me like that could be tucked closer. I mean, even if there were trees in that first entrance behind where the people are on the left, it's filtering it, but it's not the way the other developments along that road are. They often have like an entryway that doesn't lead your eye into the big cut down spaces. And it feels to me like that's a big open entry there. And I just wondered.
Well, if I could jump in there, I mean, I think it's primarily safety, right? I think you got a lot of hidden driveways down Vineyard Haven Eggertown Road that don't lend themselves to safety. And we've got, fire trucks, ambulances need to get in everywhere, in particular, to a project like this, but it's visibility. I mean, people come out onto Vineyard Haven Eggertown Road. We have a bike path that goes right down there. You need to make sure that the cars can see bikes and people walking and safely enter onto Vineyard Haven Eggertown Road. So I think there's a minimum there.
I understand that. If there was a depth of, see how those layers of vegetation are on the right? If that was also in in the space between the duplexes and the greenhouses on the left, that would enclose it a little bit. And does the entryway to the duplexes have to be as large as it appears there? I know you showed us a diagram before, but that looks very large since what you're turning into is an interior road. Just a
So
thought.
that turning is a minimum turning movement. There's a crosswalk there. We want to have visibility for that. There is a part of this design that you have to remember that it would be great to just have a bowling alley that you can't see with a big S in it, and that's what we initially perceived. But that pushed the development further to the south, which the Natural Heritage Program objected to.
I understand their limitations. I just
this-
thought
Yeah,
this is the time to comment on it. And if there's anything you could do about squeezing that a little bit, making it a little less of a big opening, that would be great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Ben?
Yeah, I saw in the comments that the green homes are going to be solar ready. There's a fairly significant amount of flat space in the roof area. Obviously, there will be equipment up there, but it would be nice to understand sort of how much solar potential those roofs have. I think you were talking about 3 of the roofs on the workforce housing would have solar, and that would be about 150 kilowatts. I would imagine this property is going to use a significant amount more energy than that. And it would, it's not just a benefit to everyone else, but it's also a benefit to your maintenance and costs going forward if you're generating more power on the site. So I would encourage to look at how much solar you actually can produce on that site, not just on those 3 buildings, but on as much of it as you possibly can, especially those flat roofs that nobody is ever going to see.
Yeah, Mark, do you want to speak to or Neil? Either one of you want to chime in there?
Sure. Yeah, I'm here again. Neil Lemieux, Columbia Construction. We built the hospital about 15 years ago. We did study the solar carefully, as Guy and others mentioned, for the workforce housing. There's really good southern exposure there. The Navigator facilities have agreed to have some flat roofs, but they also have some sloped mansard roofs that create a lot of shade. So the Navigator facilities, with all the equipment that'll be on the roof, just don't have optimum exposure like the workforce housing buildings do, based on the shade. So we chose the workforce housing with the best exposure.
That seems like a design mistake then, honestly. I mean, to have such a large building with so much roof area and then to preclude the ability for solar to be on it seems like a huge miss on the design of those buildings.
Hey, Ben, this is Dave McDonough, Navigator Homes. We are still studying solar. So Neil is right. We don't have the same light opportunities that the workforce housing has. So I would not conclude there is no solar. We're still studying it, but we'll be limited just because of the shade and the HVAC equipment that'll be on the roof. So we are looking at studying it to have some solar to the extent we're able to.
It would be good to let us know that while the before the record closes, so that we'll be able to evaluate that. If you've got a specific proposal or just an explanation in writing as to what the limits are for Navigator home roofs, please get it to us while the record is open. Next is Michael Kim, and I think we've had a lot of opportunity for commissioner questions and comments. I'd like to get to the public. We've got 3 other public hearings. I don't think we want to extend this meeting till midnight. So go ahead, Michael.
A very quick request further to Kathy's comments about the landscaping at the entry. I get it. I have talented renderers in my office. They're not the most accurate. I don't believe that the planting is an accurate representation of the safety requirements on either side of the entrance. So I would ask that that rendering be revised, or if it is correct, which I doubt, it be verified that it is holding the correct and minimum dimensions away from the corner for the landscaping. And if we could have that by the next meeting, that would be appreciated.
Okay, I'm going to assume we're done with commissioner questions. And I'm going to ask if there are any members of the public who have not testified before and will not be available. Alex, do we have any idea when we could have a continued public hearing date session for this? Because
We'd have to confirm. The earliest possible would be October 20th, but more likely first day in November.
Okay. Keeping that in mind, if there are members of the public who wish to testify and will not be available to testify on October 20th and who have not previously testified, this is your opportunity. And I'm going to limit each member who wishes to testify, if there is anyone, to 3 minutes because we got to move along. Is there anyone who wishes to, Lucy, has anybody signed up?
We had 2 people register. Iris Freeman is here, so she can.
We'll take Iris Freeman first. Go ahead, Iris.
Thank you. And this is my maiden voyage. Mr. Hearing Officer, Madam Chair, and Commission members, I'm grateful for this opportunity to speak in support of the Navigator Homes Hospital project. My name is Iris Freeman. My husband, Warren Wussner, and I own a home in Edgartown, dividing our time throughout the year between the Vineyard and Minneapolis. To fill out the demographics, both of us were born in 1944. Each of us has one or more chronic illnesses. So yes, the matter could become personal in the foreseeable future. I've served 3 terms, the 3-term limit on the Board of Directors of Martha's Vineyard Community Services, and currently serve on the Healthy Aging Martha's Vineyard Board. But truly, this long-term care has been my professional focus for 4.5 decades. I'm by training a social worker, a gerontologist, an early nursing home ombudsman, longtime a policy advocate at the Minnesota state legislature and federal levels, and an educator with graduate level social work and law students. So clearly, I come to speak to mission and not physical execution. Aging safely and fully on Martha's Vineyard requires the availability of the entire spectrum of care, including the nursing facility level of care. Having to leave the island at a time of particular vulnerability raises a significant likelihood of relocation, trauma, and isolation from familiar people and places, none of which are good for your health or longevity, and both invariably harmful to frail older adults, particularly elevated when dementia is a factor. And in so many cases, it is. But we're not just talking residential care, but quality care. And I would add that there is, to be sure, a fundamental and essential component to quality care in the presence of trained staff who are supported. And support comes not only through training, not only through compensation, but through having enough hands on deck. None of the most talented individuals can manage the care of multiple individuals wholly on her own or his own. And so my enthusiasm for this project is that recognizing that nearby affordable housing is truly a way to attract and retain and support staff. That to me is what makes this an especially well-reasoned and worthy endeavor. And that is my statement for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Who else, Lucy?
The other individual who registered is Mary Woodcock, but I don't see her here under her normal name. So Mary, if you are here, can you please raise your hand or unmute?
Let us know you're here.
I don't see her. I guess we should move on.
Okay. Are there any other members of the public who wish to testify about this matter? If so, raise your hand or use the little yellow hand in the reactions link and let Lucy know.
I'm not seeing anybody, Doug.
Okay, then what I will do at this point is continue this public hearing to, what's a better date? The 20th of October or the 3rd of November, Alex?
We could actually do the 20th at this point, I think.
We will do that. I'm continuing the public hearing to October 20th. If you can, some things were requested during this session by commissioners. If you can get them to staff 3 business days before October 20th, not the day before, 3 business days before, that would be very helpful. I'd like to be able to close the public hearing on October 20th. But if we get things at the last minute and we haven't seen them and the public hasn't seen them, I'm going to have to continue it again. Okay, so October 20th, see you all then.
Yeah, and I just want to say also reiterating with Doug to try to close it. If the commissioners or anybody else has any questions, if you can give it to us within a week so we can get the answers at the public hearing on the 20th, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next is 43 Look Street demolition. This is a continued public hearing. This is 43 Look Street in the town of Tisbury. It's DRI 736. It's a proposal to demolish a house built around 1900. I know that since the September 8th session of the public hearing, we have received a detailed memo from our peer review expert. Alex, can you tell us what else we've received?
Yep. I just screen share again. So we've also, that's pretty much the bulk of what we've received. I'll just go through the findings from the peer review by preservation consultant Eric Dre, who we've used before. Just quick recap, the properties on the corner of Brook Street and William Street. About 3.3 acres. This is the existing house listed as 1900. And then elevation of the proposed house from Brook Street. We'll come back to the elevation. This is the rendering of the house, obviously not the surroundings, but the proposed house, which we'll come back to. So the proposal, again, is to demolish the existing house and to build a larger house in its place. So the peer review memo, which we received and I sent out, looks at both the existing structure in terms of its architectural significance and the proposed structure in terms of its appearance and style, and both of those in relation to the streetscape particularly. That also involves some updated floor area calculations, which I'll show. The applicant also provided an email regarding peer review, restating previous arguments and that they had stated before. And this is also all reflected in the staff report, but the peer review either updated or expanded on information that was already in our staff notes. So I just want to go through that quickly in terms of historic significance of the existing house. So the things in red here are additions or expansions by the peer review. So age, we know that. History and culture, no specific people or events that we know of associated with the house, but it is part of development pattern that the peer review, the Eric Drake identified as being the stretch of Look Street between State Road and Spring Street, which sort of rises up in elevation, and where all the streets on Look Street more or less face the street and are similar in size. So that's a more narrow area of focus. In terms of design and construction, we previously thought the house might have been an example of the federal style. Eric clarified that it's actually the American four-square style, which is basically symmetrical construction. In this case, there's a hip pyramid roof, mostly symmetrical windows on each side. There are a number of these houses in Massachusetts. The Massachusetts Historical Commission documents about 1,800 of those houses. But on the Vineyard, there are only 3 other documented cases. 2 of those are in the Edgartown Historic District and 1 in Oak Bluffs. Of the houses of this period along the stretch of Look Street that we're considering, this would be the only one with the recognizable architectural style, according to Eric. In terms of previous alterations, Eric concluded that the overall form, possibly the windows, front door, and trim all appear to be original. The floor plan itself is also typical of 4 square houses in terms of the layout. The porch is also most likely original and was later enclosed. The relationship to the streetscape was where a lot of the new information came from in the peer review. So let's go through that. Again, part of the development pattern along Look Street, a specific part of Look Street. It's similar to other houses on that stretch in terms of the lot size and the orientation of the house, with the house set back a little bit and facing the street. It's also from the same period as most other houses along that stretch, from 1880 to 1920. Again, the only one with a recognizable style within that age group. Fenestration is pretty much the same as other houses in that along that stretch, where all of the houses facing the street also have a single front door, as in 43 Look Street. There are other enclosed porches along the street. It's unknown whether the original siding on this house was clapboard or shingles, because it's been covered over with vinyl siding. But there are some other houses in the area that have synthetic siding. The applicant provided this survey of houses along that section of Look Street. We broke this down and also added the dates of each of those houses. So this presentation will be in the record. Again, most of these houses are from the period between 1880 and 1920. Historic designation, visibility, and condition, none of that really changed as a result of the peer review. Structural report is the same as it was, mostly points out issues related from water intrusion and also some shifting inside the house. The peer review also looked at the replacement structure, clarified that the footprint of the existing, based on everything that he's seen, is actually 776 square feet. And the proposed footprint would be 1,580 square feet. Eric also looked at the overall volume of the existing and proposed house rather than just the livable area, which would be more meaningful in terms of the type of impacts that we're looking at. So that would increase from about 1,900 to 3,400 square feet and would make this house one of the largest in this stretch of Look Street and most likely one of the tallest as well. Although the footprint of the house, given the size of the lot, would still be pretty much in line with the other properties along that stretch. Again, rendering from Look Street of the proposed house. These are all things that we had mostly already identified, but I'll just go through. So these are additional findings from the peer review memo. So in terms of, I just mentioned some of this, but in terms of the siding, again, the siding of the new house is pretty much consistent. Mentioned the scale, would be one of the largest houses on the street. Going the wrong way. So this is the site plan. The existing footprint is in light gray and the proposed in dark gray. So it expands to the back and to the left of looking at it from the street. In terms of design, Eric identified this as, you consider example of the modern Queen Anne style in terms of the proposed structure. There are examples of that on the island, but not in this area. So there wouldn't be any precedent for that type of style on Look Street. In terms of windows and doors, there would be more fenestration, windows and doors on the front elevation than what's currently there. But then the sides of the proposed building would have less, the ratio of window space to wall space would be much different than what's on the other houses in the area. Or in this case, you would have, fewer windows more irregularly placed along the side, which we have elevation showing. Eric pointed out that there is also no precedent for that type of fenestration on Look Street. Also no precedent for double height porches as proposed in the structure facing Look Street. So it would be the only house with that type of appearance. With the 2 levels of decking. This is the rear elevation. Fenestration there is more or less what's there currently. But then on the sides, this is the side looking up Look Street. We have more regular sparse window placement. And this would be the side facing William Street where you have sort of the same situation, which would make it stand out on the street. Going back to the rendering, again, you see the 2 levels of decking, which would be unusual for the area. And I guess, you can see some elements of the Queen Anne style here with the decorative and massing features. But again, that you don't see that elsewhere on Look Street.
Is that a sliding glass door on the 2nd floor?
It doesn't look like it's a sliding door. We could clarify that with the applicant.
Okay.
So again, it's unknown whether the original siding was clapboard or shingles. If it were to be determined somehow that there are one or the other beneath the existing final siding, then that would determine what would be most appropriate in the replacement structure. So overall, the conclusion is that the siding and footprint of the new house would be consistent with what you see along the corridor. But the style itself would be pretty inconsistent with other houses in the area in terms of the scale and design. These are just looking at the comparison existing on the left and proposed on the right. These aren't exactly to scale, and we saw these last time, so we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on it. And Eric is here tonight. I think if he had a little bit of time if I missed anything or he wanted to highlight anything or answer questions from the commission, this would be a good time for that.
The only thing I would just initially say, Alex, is that just to correct or amend your presentation, it wouldn't be one of the biggest houses in that corridor, it would be the biggest house. So by a fair amount.
Is there anything else you'd like to add, Eric, before I ask commissioners if they have questions of you regarding your evaluation? I must say it was very thorough and helpful. Thank you.
Okay. No, I'm open to questions or.
Any commissioner questions of Eric?
Tripp has his hand up.
Okay, Tripp and then Joan. You have to unmute, Tripp.
I'm curious about the rendition. It looks like the house is on stilts. I don't think it has to be on stilts in that neighborhood. Am I wrong?
That's not.
The rendering is actually incorrect. I mean, the rendering, that's not actually what would be the, it would be have a regular foundation.
I thought. So it'll bring it down. The drawing would look a little bit different if it was sitting on a foundation.
Correct.
Well, would the foundation be, well, I didn't include in calculating the relative volumes of houses along that street. I didn't include basements because obviously they don't really add volume above grade, with the understanding that there is some exposure to foundations among the houses. I don't know whether this house would retain that sort of 3-foot foundation height or not.
Would it, Mr. Morrison? Do you know?
What was his question?
Question is, would the house retain the 3-foot height, foundation height?
No, it would not. It would not be as shown in the architectural rendering.
No, we understand that because it's on stilts in the architectural rendering. The question is whether it would retain the customary 3-foot foundation height.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, John, and then Ben.
Eric, in your report, I think it was in where you had the sort of table, and you mentioned, so you made a point of sort of mentioning that the property cards in Tisbury gave volume measurements for living area. And so when you use the term overall volume, do you mean overall square footage? Is that?
Yeah, they had different columns for gross area and living area. And I think the living area relates more to valuation of a property, but in terms of finished spaces, but we're more concerned here about sort of, the physical presence relative to other buildings. And so I use the gross area. They have measurements for all kinds of different ways of describing their measurements, but they also include basements, but they also include decks. Like, for example, there's a deck shown on the footprint of 43 Look Street, but it's just a sort of slightly above grade wood platform. So it doesn't really add any volume to the building per se.
So for massing, sort of visual and massing purposes, what's the column or what's the measure that you think is relevant? Is it overall volume? Is that what or?
Yeah, I mean, I think the two calculus that I included are the relevant ones. One is just, what is the relative footprint of this building to others? And in that respect, I don't think it's necessarily problematic. As I had said, it's not one of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
But in terms of, because it's a full 2.5 or whatever stories, it in volume, it ends up being bigger than any other on the corridor.
Okay, that's it. Just clarification. Thank you.
Ben, you had.
Can I just say that I also thought your report was extremely helpful and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Ben,
Doug, I was just going to say the site, well, the elevations show that it would be on a 3-foot foundation.
Okay. That's helpful. Linda.
Wanted to say that there have been a couple comments about elevations not exactly representing what it's going to be. And we have to have presented to us renderings of this house that are accurate visually. So please fix it if it's not accurate.
I think the elevations are accurate. The rendering, you're right.
I don't care whether it's an elevation or a rendering. Any representation of the structure should be accurate.
We should understand this is a modular home, and there's a full set of construction drawings based on the modular construction. So that's probably your best representation of what's going to be built.
Well, the representation that's been taken that's going to be built is based on the rendering. But let me let you understand that the rendering is basically just a drawing to enhance or to entice the buyer. So these houses don't come with decks. These houses don't come with the decorative motif on the gable ends. Those are all suggestions. So when you see this, we're not putting a second story on this house. We're not putting a second story deck on this. We have a first story deck. We don't have the decorative Queen Anne style motif that we have on the gable ends. So what you're looking at is just like Ms. Sibley said, it's not accurate. You're basing everything off of a rendering. It's like the box of a TV dinner, a serving suggestion. That's exactly how a rendering that you're looking at is presented.
In other words, you provided us with an inaccurate rendering and we've been relying on it.
It's the only rendering we have. That's the only rendering that is produced for the house.
Well,
we're not supposed to rely on the rendering. We're supposed to rely on the stamp plans. That's what we're building. We're not building a rendering. We're building the exact things that are on the stamped, engineered building plans. I thought
you also included elevation drawings which show the double decks.
Well, but you see, if you read closely, it says on site by builder. That doesn't necessarily mean that we have to build that. That's included because that's how the house is being presented. We don't have to have a deck on there at all. It's not going to come with a deck.
Told us that,
The
though,
house
Mike.
does not come with a deck.
That's the first time you've told us that you're now telling us that you're not going to put the second floor deck on. That's
You
good.
never asked me about that. We
I
never.
don't have to ask you. You have to tell us what you're going to build.
Well, I have to. That's what I've been doing. Well, you took the assumption that we were going to do a second floor deck. We never had time to discuss that.
Sorry, do we have the stamped plans?
Yes, we've had them for a while.
Stamp plans show the exterior second floor deck. They show the doors going out onto exterior deck. If you're not going to build the deck, what are the doors for?
Okay, well, I suggest, Michael, you, if you have an opportunity, you put in writing to the commission and send to Alex a description, a narrative description that very accurately describes what you are going to build, and make sure that the stamped drawings, elevations that you want us to rely on represent that. Because what the replacement building will be is an important factor in determining whether or not to approve a proposed demolition.
I understand. So basically, the demolition is predicated on what we're putting up there now?
No, it's not predicated on that, but it is certainly one of the factors, as is stated in our historic preservation policy. Okay, I don't know exactly who's next.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a motion to table this this hearing until we get accurate drawings?
We have accurate drawings. The accurate drawings are the stamp plans.
Those are not accurate.
Why aren't they?
Because there's a two-story
According to the state of
representation.
Massachusetts, they're accurate. They're approved to build their state-approved plans. What more accuracy do you need?
The drawings are accurate, but your comments tonight have contradicted what the
It
drawings
has to
show.
show the intention to build.
Right.
So if I can make a motion to table this hearing until a future date, until we can get accurate representations of what's going to be built, I would like to make that motion.
Well, you've made the motion. Is there a second? I think we've got a number of commissioners who have their hands up. We might be able to get some work done, even with the very legitimate problem that has arisen.
I'm a little confused as to what we have and what we don't have. I don't remember the plans, but I would ask, do the plans reflect anything that is not proposed to be built? Do the stamped plans, let me ask that differently. Do the stamped plans represent precisely what is intended to be built?
By the factory, yes. By us, no.
No, well,
Then that's fine.
depending-
But you're the builder.
That's a
They
clear
don't
question.
represent what is going to be built.
But
And
listen.
the motion stands that we table this until we
Okay,
have.
so in other words, you want me to
representation.
have the stamps reprinted without showing the second floor deck?
What we want from you is a plan that shows elevations that you are going to build. We don't care what the factory does.
These are the plans.
Excuse me, Michael, let me finish. What we care about is what you are going to build. And if, for example, on what's on the screen, you're not going to build that second floor deck, we shouldn't have a plan that says that it's there. We need from you what you're going to build. Okay?
That would include, Doug, that would include the doors on the second floor deck. If those are also going to disappear once the deck disappears, then that would.
Good point.
Well, you know, this whole thing wasn't decided upon until we had to get a third party involved with this, because we knew it wasn't about the historical value of the house anymore. It was about what we were going to put up. So we had come to the decision amongst ourselves that we were going to eliminate the second floor deck, and that was going to be proposed to you in this meeting. Now, as far as the windows, we could keep the window of a full light window, or just replace the patio door there. But
you will have an opportunity to do that. There was not a second to Michael.
Yes, I seconded the motion. Apparently I didn't, but I would also add to it that the applicant work with the staff to help untangle what we said tonight we need. It's actually pretty straightforward. And Alex is wonderful at helping you make a straightforward.
I would just say, is the applicant okay going forward with these renderings and these plans, basing on the fact that we're willing to judge it on those plans that they're showing? Is he okay with that?
Well, yes, I am, because the plans that are shown, right? Anytime that there's a rendering on a house from the factory, the stamp plans are shown with that proposed or suggested deck or stone face siding or what have you. That doesn't necessarily that we have mean that we're going to use that. And that's why it's specified on the plans on site by builder. It has nothing to do with when that house comes and is set on that foundation, the deck is not even there.
We're wasting our time.
Yeah.
Right. But
Okay,
I would,
wait a second.
Could I make a little suggestion to Mr. Morrison?
Yes, please.
What if you had a basic plan and then there would be options that you could say, so we knew what we were looking at? No?
I
was
think
We
so.
have a motion and a second.
There's a motion and a second.
Motion and a second.
Well, you know, listen, okay, let me ask you this. What if we kept the second floor? See, that's the big
Submit
issue.
what you're going to
Do
build.
whatever you want.
Until then, forget it. We'll review it when you got a full submission. We know what we're talking about.
The reason
You
that
have a
I'm
waste of
making
time.
this,
Hey!
I'm sorry?
Thank you.
Too many people talking at one time.
Exactly. Lucy, please mute everyone except me.
And
I'll call on people, okay? We're not going to have a free-for-all here. Fred, you have your hand up. There is a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. I will take comment on the motion and then we will have a vote on it. Please go ahead, Fred.
okay, on the motion, I totally agree, because even if they take the second floor off, there's nothing showing what the porch roof would look like. I understand that he sent a set of plans that have options, but in no time were we ever told what options he was going to execute or not execute. And I think it would be prudent for the applicant, and I think he might realize it after this, that even should we be inclined to grant the demolition, the replacement building would form a large part of whether we approve this project or not. And with that in mind, you might want to rethink some of your options, and also looking at our peer review report, I think you might want to reevaluate this replacement building. I would just put that out to you. It might be something that's worthwhile for you.
Okay, now, next Linda, then Tripp, then Jim, then Joan, again on the motion.
Well, it's a little difficult. I don't know whether this is on the motion. It's really, I want to explain to Michael Morrison that the Martha's Vineyard Commission has been in business for decades, and our enabling legislation charges us to preserve the character of the island. So if you wanted to build a Bauhaus modern replacement, we'd clearly say no. Someplace in between is looking at your architectural renderings and say, yeah, that'll fit in that location. It won't stick out like a sore thumb. It will preserve the character. And we are required to say that, to find that.
Okay, I don't know who I said was next. I assume it was Tripp. Tripp, you have the floor on the motion. Go
I'm
ahead.
not sure what the motion was, but if you can
Motion
bring the
is
picture
to
back up. I was the first person to say anything, because the drawing that we looked at the first time, the architectural with the water in the background, everything else was very misleading. If you can bring up the last drawing that we looked at, I just would like to point something out to everybody which nobody saw. Can we bring up that the stamp drawing that we were shown? All right, if that's fine. The point I want to make is it says on-site deck by builder. This is, I think all the space where it showed, what do they call them, spiles before, the ground's going to cover most of that, and that's going to bring the mass down, way down. It's not going to, what are you going to walk upstairs to get into the house? I think he's got probably the basic thing to explain to us what he wants to do or what if we are interested in it. Morrison comes to us. We were there before, looked at Christ, I used to live across the street from him. But from not him, but from the house. And I'm very familiar with it. And this is just a shame because could look awfully nice there if you just kind of cut the bottom of this picture off and put that porch pretty much down on ground level. And you will see something that looks much more fitting. And it's stamped and it's ready to go. It's just neither one of the drawings were corkers. That's all I got to say.
Okay, Jim.
I'm just wondering if what would be appropriate is to continue this because we have conflicting information we've been given. Until we straighten that out, I don't think we can really do anything useful. I don't know if tabling is the right
It
maneuver.
might be the wrong motion, but it's the right idea. It's what you're saying.
What Michael means is to continue the public hearing until we have accurate drawings of what the applicant plans to build. Isn't that what you mean, Michael?
Yes, and I accept continue in lieu of table as a friendly amendment.
Right.
And that is exactly what I seconded it.
Right. And Jim, thank you for speaking to the motion. Joan?
Well, I'm going to maybe not speak precisely to the motion, but I think Michael needs to understand something. The plans that you provide to us, you will be required to build exactly to those plans because you will be required to send us as-built plans. And if they don't agree, then you will not, quote, be in compliance with any order that we issue. So I would support continuing this, and I would strongly urge you to produce drawings which are precise drawings of what you intend to build, and nothing more and nothing less.
Okay, may I speak? May I comment on that? What you see
Michael,
now?
you don't have the floor yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Christina?
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I said my piece. Was a simple second, continue the public hearing until, the Morrisons can fix that plan so it's exact as Joan pointed out. And you certainly might be able to talk with Alex at the staff about that. Because sometimes he understands what we're saying better than we do. And better
So
than
can we have a vote, please? Take the vote.
May I have a comment before you vote, please?
You can have a comment to the motion.
Okay. I just want to make one more comment on this design. What we have designed and approved by the state is what we intended to build.
Mm-hmm.
We are willing to take the second floor off if it would make the house more appealing to the neighborhood. And we say that in respect to the abutter that made comment about the second floor deck being intrusive on the neighbors. We came to a conclusion, myself and the homeowner or the property owner, that if we have to take the second deck off, we can. So maybe I spoke inappropriately. What you see there in front of you is what we intend to build. We have French doors on the second floor. We did intend on having a deck there. But if that is going to be the decision maker, if we can build this house and put it on a standard foundation, we'll forego that second floor deck to make it more appropriate. So when I said that, yes, what you see today is what we want to build, but we're willing to make alterations to that if it helps this process move on. That's my misstatement to the committee, to the commission this evening, and I apologize for that.
No.
I think we should move the question and have staff work with the applicant.
All in favor? You know what? This is complicated enough. Lucy, call the roll.
No problem. Let's start with Kate Putnam.
A vote.
Let me see if can you restate what we're voting for, just so that I make sure I'm voting the correct way?
Michael has moved and Christina has seconded a motion to continue the public hearing to afford the applicant an opportunity to work with staff to provide plans that show exactly what he's going to build.
I'm in favor, yes.
You have them.
Let's get through the vote, Michael, and then we can talk to you about. what-
Okay.
Thanks, Adam.
Jay Grossman,
Yes.
Linda Sibley,
yes,
Ernie Thomas,
Yes.
Fred Hancock,
Yes.
Jeff Agnoli,
Yes.
Kathy Newman,
Yes.
Greg Martino,
If he's not going to submit different plans, then no. It sounds like he's not going to submit different plans. So
Thank
no
you.
for me.
Thank you.
Trip Barnes,
Well, if he's not going to submit different plans, no, we'd go with what he's got. It's a stamped plan.
Christina Brown,
Yes,
Jim Veracruz,
Yes.
Ben Robinson,
Yes.
Michael Kim,
Yes.
Doug Cedarholm. Doug?
Yeah,
Okay,
yes.
sorry. Peter Wharton
No.
and Chair Joan Malkin.
Yes.
Okay, the vote was 13-3. The motion passes. You'll have an opportunity to work with the applicant, excuse me, with staff, so that when we continue at the continued public hearing, we will know what we're looking at for the replacement building. And we will also have an opportunity for our consultant to look at it if it's in any way different, and supplement the peer review. We will also, at Joan's request, Joan has asked that we seek an opinion from the Tisbury Historic Commission, even though this is not within a historic district, to see if they have any thoughts or comments with regard to the preservation and demolition of the building. Alex has contacted the Historic Commission, and we would be continuing this anyway to give them an opportunity to provide us with their opinion. Alex, when from what the applicant said, it doesn't sound like it's going to take him an awfully long time
You
to.
already have the plans. It shouldn't, you already
Yeah.
have them.
Do not have the floor. Please do not speak unless I call on you. Alex, what time do we need? We do need some time for the Historic Commission. You're muted.
You're muted, Alex. You're muted.
Sorry. So the Historic Commission usually only meets once a month, and they just met yesterday. So they might, if they do this, they'd have to have an extra meeting. I haven't heard back from them yet. So I don't know if it's October 20th might be a little too optimistic. Do we need to specify a date tonight?
But we do have to have some kind of date, even if we have to put it off again. Why don't we say,
Yeah, okay, October 20th then.
yeah, we'll continue it to October 20th. And if we have to continue it again without taking testimony, we will, depending on what happens with the Historic Commission.
And I might say for any member of the public who's here, if you check the calendar, you will see whether we're ready to go on the 20th. If it's still on the agenda for the 20th, we'll be ready to go. If it's scratched off, you can come, we will announce it and pick another date, but we won't be taking testimony.
And,
Probably.
as far as staff goes, we'll contact Mr. Morris, and I will tomorrow, make sure that his final offer and what he wants to put forward is presented so that so we can move forward. Thank you.
Okay,
It looks like Eric wants to say something.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to make one comment in terms of context and the design. My description of the proposed house as being sort of a modern interpretation of the Queen Anne style was based on its form, not its ornamentation. I didn't really talk about the ornamentation at all. You know, the major character defining feature that is that large, hexagonal turret form, and that introduces a complexity in the house, massing and form that you just don't find on that street. So I just wanted to make sure that it's not the ornamentation that we're talking about when I reference Queen Anne. It's the complex massing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, you did have your hand up. And if you want to say something, I certainly will entertain it. You have to unmute.
I had a question in regards to the purpose of the Historical Society's role in this matter.
We just try to get information from as many relevant sources as possible. They have no jurisdiction over this structure. However, they do have some expertise on historical structures in the town of Tisbury, and we do seek input from historic commissions on structures that are submitted for demolition, even if they're not in a historic district.
But why do your own notes state that the project is not subject to review by any other agency that could condition or deny the demolition? No other agency has provided comment on this proposal. Those are your words.
They are our words, and we are seeking their opinion. Their opinion may be, we have no opinion. Like I said, they do not have.
If their opinion has no bearing on the decision of to demolish or not, what's the purpose of their opinion in the first place?
Their opinion, they have some expertise on historic buildings in the town of Tisbury.
Okay, that's not answering my question. What does their opinion have to do with that decision of demolishing or not demolishing the house?
We are gathering information to inform our opinion as to whether or not it should be demolished.
So your decision to demolish will be influenced by the information that you gather from the Historical Society. Is that correct?
And it will be influenced by the information we gather from you and from every member of the public who testifies.
Okay, but you state here that no other outside agency, there's no subject, is not subject to review. You state this in your own document.
I don't think
now you're going the other direction. How do you explain that?
And I'm not going to debate it with you any further.
Well, you don't have to debate it.
We've also used that agency. We used it at the next block.
This is not a historical situation. This is a demolition. This is based on demolishing a house. You're here arguing about keeping a house that's a hazard to your environment, that leaks, that has a compromised foundation.
You know what, Mr. Morrison, you'll have an opportunity to testify at the continued public hearing. That's enough. Okay. Next is Safe Harbor Marina. DRI 258 M2. This is a continued public hearing. What we're going to do with this is a substantial amount of materials were submitted yesterday. And there is a good bit of public interest in this DRI. And because of that, the public has not had an opportunity, and I don't know if commissioners have, but the public certainly has not had an opportunity to review and digest the new information. What we're going to do tonight is have Alex identify the new information. Any member of the public who wishes to testify tonight may do so. And if the applicant wishes to say anything, they'll have an opportunity. But I am definitely going to continue this public hearing, I think to October 20th. Is that the date, Alex?
That's getting pretty heavy on the 20th.
Maybe November the 3rd then, but it will definitely be continued so that the any member of the public who wishes to testify on the information we have received in the last 24 hours will have an opportunity to do so. But Alex, why don't you first identify the information that has, and I do know, I think Lucy's indicated maybe half a dozen people wish to testify on this tonight. So we will hear from them. Go ahead. First, tell us what has just been submitted.
Okay. So this is a list of new information as of yesterday. There's a response to MVC questions. That response includes a number of attachments, which are, I recommend commission look at those. Topics covered in the response include the number of boats that will be in the water as a result of the project compared to the current conditions. We also, staff put together a summary presentation, which I sent out and is in the record, that just shows the previous existing and proposed uses in terms of where the new rack storage space and water storage spaces will be. Staff concurs with the applicant that looking at everything that they've given us so far, there would be a reduction of about 6 boats in the water per day, accounting for the increase in valet boat slips, but also the decrease in seasonal storage spaces in the water. So that's in the record. The applicant clarified there is no maximum height of boats, although for boats in the racks, they can't be more than 14 feet. We asked about shrink wrap recycling to try to confirm how that process works and how effective it is. There is no chain of custody that's available, and we weren't able to confirm what specific facilities that material ends up at. We can keep trying on that. Contingency plan for building 7. We had a proposal from a island developer to relocate that to a separate lot on Beach Road. The applicant has stated that they will work with other interested parties if that doesn't happen. We have an application form for the Clean Marina designation. Outlines a long list of best management practices and other things that the applicant needs to indicate whether or not they do. And Safe Harbor has begun that process, and I believe their approval is expected sometime in October. That would make them one of the first Clean Marina certified marinas in the state. We have more information from the Division of Marine Fisheries in terms of what caused the shellfish closures around the marina. It was unclear previously whether or not that was just a result of the water quality based on water quality testing, and if the decision had anything to do with the fact that there is a marina in the area. DMF clarified that it's only because of the water quality results that those areas have been closed to shell fishing. The response document includes a report from DMF that is basically an evaluation of the lagoon, including the West Arm, in terms of possible pollution sources, which is really helpful. It lays out all the possible sources, land uses, and also discusses possible impacts from the marina. So in addition to that, we have response to other staff questions, some of those just clarifying earlier questions. A new proposed site plan that includes the wetland delineation that had come up before during the hearing. So the new site plan shows the wetland delineation here in green, also the mean high water mark. And in relation to that, we have a new drainage plan. Previously, the drainage plan was only for the area where there will be a new concrete pad. The new drainage plan shows the entire site and includes new vegetated drainage swales that were not part of the plan previously, and also, I believe, a new sandy area underneath one of the existing racks. Also, a brief narrative to go along with that plan. It's designed for a 25-year storm. There have been concerns about possible soil compaction underneath the new rack that's proposed near the wetland. Vineyard Land Surveying and Engineering, which designed the drainage plan, has stated that there would be really no impacts in terms of compaction. The foundation of the rack would occupy a total of about 500 square feet, and the Vineyard Land Surveying does not see any issues with that. They also point out that the proposed rack would be 16 feet farther from the edge of the wetland than the current buildings that are there, which would be removed, and that the drainage on the site would be improved as well. So they did not have concerns about impacts on the wetland. We also have formal offers from the applicant, which I won't go through, but those are in the record, and one additional letter from a concerned citizen. So that's all the new information. I did send that to commissioners, and if you go to the website, they should all be available on the DRA page for the project.
Okay. Linda, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd be happy if that thing was back on the screen, but my general point, as everybody knows, Alex, also, I hate it when you give letters like SHM status, DMF evaluation, or VLSE letter without spelling out what those mean. even if we can digest it because we're familiar with these things, the public at large can't understand this, and this is a public document. So please add the words.
So this is Safe Harbor, Marina, Division of Marine Fisheries and Vineyard Land Surveying, but
Please
next time
add them so
I'll,
that they can
yeah.
be read by people who read this document.
Okay, Lucy, who do we have who's signed up to testify?
Yeah, so first we've got Barbara Copens. Again, I'm going to apologize in advance if I don't say your name properly. Barbara.
Fine, Lucy, thank you. First of all, our family has been on the lagoon since 1978, and I am very active with the Lagoon Pond Association. So I know what good stewards the MVC has been of the environment and how active you are in trying to improve the water quality in the lagoon. Adam mentioned the IA systems that you're working with. We work with Sherry on testing and other innovative things that can be done to improve the lagoon, which you know as well as any of us is in terrible danger, and it needs to be improved. That's why I'm concerned that there is really any serious consideration of approving an expansion of a multi-million-dollar international corporation's plan to add more boats to the lagoon and more parking spaces for cars right on the lagoon. And I'm sort of tired of hearing them say, well, they're taking 10 boats out of the water, but they're adding 30 net boats that are going to be in the lagoon, using the lagoon. And these are all motorboats, 2, 3 motors, some of them. They have everything that can go wrong when you're boating that impacts water quality. There can be fuel leaks, there can be head leaks, there can be cleaning products that are used to clean the boats that get into the lagoon. And there can just be garbage. In addition to the environment of the lagoon, the water quality, there's a safety issue. 30 additional boats, they keep saying, oh, they're just gonna go in and out. They're gonna go right out through under the bridge. They're not going to be using the lagoon, these 30 additional boats. But that's not true, because I live near there and I see that those boats, they don't always go in and out. They come down the lagoon, sometimes they fish, sometimes they drag people on skis. So they are using the lagoon, and it's 30 additional boats, net additional boats. I know that they can say, this is what we really want to help the lagoon and we're going to do this or that. But, you know, you may have a nice guy who's running the operation this year, but who knows next year, the year after, that who's going to be running it, and they don't really care. And who is going to make sure that everything they say they do, they're going to do, they're doing? Who's going to enforce it? No one, probably. And I think there are a number of issues that the parking, they're apparently increasing the parking. That's more cars, runoff, fuel leaks that end up, if they don't run off, I hear them talking about, oh, this is going to be permeable. It's going to go into, it's not going to run off into the lagoon, it's going to go into the groundwater. Well, the groundwater ends up in the lagoon eventually. So I think that there's just so many reasons that I think it's counterintuitive to approve something that's not going to help the lagoon with all the money that's being spent. hundreds of thousands of dollars it's going to be, and probably more. And to approve something that isn't helping the lagoon, it's going to only set us back more, so that we have to spend more money to improve the water quality. I think the one other thing they said something about, I'm trying to read their information, how they figured out that they'd only be in the water for 1 hour. I mean, there's a lot of numbers in there, and I just looked quickly at the new submission they made. To me, it doesn't make sense. They're estimating that there'll be fewer boats using the lagoon next year, because I don't know, they're looking at how many used it this past year. And you have to remember, this past year, there was the fuel was so expensive that people were not probably using their boats as much as normal. So if you're comparing something to this year and saying, oh, they don't use it that much, you can't go by that. I just don't feel that's a legitimate, that's legitimate. So I hope you all consider really carefully this proposal to expand. And I want to thank you again, all the people that we have worked with at the MVC. And I really admire the work you're doing. And we know that you have the best interests of the environment at heart. Thanks.
Thank you, Barbara. Who's next, Lucy?
Next up, we had Michael Conroy. He had to drop out. So next up is Doug Reese.
Mr. Reese, where are you?
Oop, sorry, Doug accidentally muted you while asking you to unmute.
Is he unmuted now?
Not yet. There we go.
How's that?
It's just fine. Go right ahead, Doug.
Great, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. My concern over this and any development on Lagoon Pond is for the health of the pond. 30 years ago, or by 34 years ago, the Martha's Vineyard Commission designated the Lagoon Pond as a DCPC. And here we are 32 years later, continuing to talk about the health of the pond and development around the pond. I personally don't know what, if any, development can be good for the health of the pond. And so I think that's the question that really comes to my mind. At what point do we reach the capacity of Lagoon Pond as far as boating, commercial aquaculture, fishing, all the recreation that goes on there? There's got to be a limit there, but I don't know how to quantify that. So I just hope that you will consider that while you're looking at this project to add these 30 more boats into our water system. But speaking of commercial development, 2-3 years ago, there were 3 aquaculture projects that were approved by the town of Tisbury on the Tisbury side of the lagoon. And those shellfish are improving the water quality of the pond by taking up nitrogen. They pull it out, they dissolve it, they spit it out into the air. And so they're removing nitrogen. That is one commercial development that is a positive mark for the pond. My other concern or question has to do with the size of these boats. Some of them having as many as 300 horsepower motors going up and down the west arm that in many areas are only 3 or 4 feet deep. And will they be churning up sediment and causing that to muddy the waters a little bit more, spread that sediment around, possibly spread it over existing shellfish beds? Those are just questions we don't know. And a large portion of the west arm is already closed to shellfishing, as has been reported. And I would really hate to see any more of that occur, because these larger boats with these motors are causing the sediment dispersal around the pond. So I just ask you to take all this into consideration and consider the health of the pond when you vote on this and anything else that goes with Lagoon Pond. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Who's next?
Next is Larry Gitlitz. Yep, there we go.
Hello.
Hi, Larry.
Do we have any image?
We do not yet.
Okay. Well, I am a resident on the lagoon. I very much appreciate the work the commission does. I have two issues that my neighbors have addressed already, and I look forward to the newest information to look at it. I did not know if I was able to make this meeting. I've been in transit all evening. So I would appreciate if the members would read the letter that has been entered. But basically, it states that my feeling is that even the conversation of having a marina who has a history of polluting the pond, and I know that firsthand from being around it, at the same time that we're making every effort to clean it up, just seems absurd. I have not seen a marina yet that doesn't use harsh chemicals for cleaning, for power washing. I think that any of us can just drive by and see what they're doing there, and I'm not criticizing them, but they use harsh detergents and acids to clean boats. They hose it outside, it runs into the water. They are a major organization that is funded with investors. And I know from being in that world, they only have one interest, which is increased profits over last year, year after year after year. Their motive is not to clean up the lagoon. I don't see anything about cleaning it. I only see better practices being mentioned, but they bought a business with that history. And I think it's self-evident that the worst part of the lagoon is right at their doorstep. I know you have other reports and I'll look forward to seeing them, but I'm very concerned about all the petrochemicals that A, the boats use, that B, they use on the boats that eventually find their way in. I think the number of engines has been understated. There are boats in there now that have up to 2,000 horsepower. There are boats that have 4 engines and 5 engines. And in the boating industry, boats are getting bigger, they're getting more powerful, they're getting much faster. Which leads me to the next point, which is the lagoon has gotten more dangerous. Boaters today do not have the education that many of us had when we were learning boating. They don't have to be licensed. I see a lot of the boats come out of there with kids driving them. They're driving up the canal and doing figure eights with people in tow on the back, which is coming close to the properties and the boats. We've had to call a number of times. The lagoon is barely policed by either Oak Bluffs or by Vineyard Haven, and somebody's going to get killed. People used to go to the end of the lagoon where it's wide to do their circles around with people in tow, whether it's on skis, whether it's on tubes, and that's changed over the last couple of years. I apologize for not being more prepared, but I was in transit, so I'd appreciate you looking at my letter, but both issues are of major concern. And I think if any of you drive by there, you'll see what I'm talking about, the size of the boats and the size of the motors on them. And somehow petrochemicals, fast boaters, already polluted lagoon, adding more of the things that polluted, just doesn't make common sense to me. And I will have more to say after I review the reports that were presented. But I thank you for your consideration and hope that you will keep both the lagoon clean and the people in there safe. And I think safety is also a major concern.
Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Lucy, I see Mr. Dubart has his hand up, but we're going to take people who registered before we take anyone from the public. Go ahead, Lucy.
Okay. Next is Tara Webb Dewey.
Hi, thank you so much to the commission for listening to the public. I'm not sure all communities do that, and I appreciate that. So let me just start briefly. There was a reference to the character of the island not too long ago in a previous presentation or conversation, and I would just like to stress that I think the character of the island is also its natural beauty, and it's really important that we maintain the natural balanced ecosystem, or I should say restore that ecosystem. My own history on the lagoon predates my birth by a few decades. It was 80 years ago that my great aunt purchased a lot in Lagoon Heights, and now 4 generations later, our extended family recharges each year at these calm, magical, and healing waters, I would say. My family is so connected with the space that a few years ago, when a property on the lagoon adjacent to ours came on the market, we pooled our resources and bought it, hoping for a forever place for next generations to gather as the family grows. This particular great aunt was very active in the Martha's Vineyard Conservation Society and instilled in all of us an appreciation for what we now call the interconnected web of life. She would be absolutely heartsick at what has happened to the life in the waters of the lagoon. Eelgrass is an example. And, I remember as a child, it was a nuisance wrapping around my ankles while we were, looking for the scallops and the hermit crabs and learning how to swim. But the lack of it now also means the disappearance of additional species, which is tragic. Habitat destruction like this is undoubtedly the result of human activity, something scientists can explain, but which we can all see. There was a reference in the new information about the reason for the decline in shellfish being due to the quality of the water. And what comes to mind is, well, why has the quality of the water degraded? I think we need to go a little further. Clearly, in my mind, it's pollution. And where does that come from? I don't think it's hard to figure out that it's right near where a lot of toxins are coming from the marina. So at any rate, it's mind-boggling to me that as efforts go into restoring the health of the lagoon ecosystem, putting in the sewers, that's an important start. There are simultaneous efforts to destroy it by expanding businesses that will increase the toxic runoff and promote the increase of boat activity. So to be clear, I am not opposed to business, and I'm interested in a strong island economy. But when it is at the expense of supporting a crucial and fragile ecosystem, I'm heartily opposed. The natural beauty of the island is what people come for, and that helps the economy. So destroying the natural beauty will impact how much people will want to come. And personally, since we do have to rent our lagoon properties to be able to maintain them, the expansion of safe harbors is detrimental to the value of our properties due to the degradation of the lagoon. So again, thank you for listening to us, and please put me on record as opposing the expansion of safe harbors, as well as other activities that will result in more harm to the precarious balance of the ecosystem. Thanks.
Thank you, Tara. Anyone else? signed up?
Last on the list, we've got Andra Minio.
Joe Minio, you said?
Andra, she's here.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Okay. As my sister just said, thank you everybody for letting me talk. And I'll probably not try to say everything anybody else has said because they've said it better than I can. But I have to tell you, this is just the most heartbreaking project I've ever seen. I've watched the lagoon, let's see, I'm around 69, 70 years. I was actually here before I was born. And to me, the lagoon, as Tara said, just been such a healer for our family. And we've been coming up for years and just so saddened by the fact that we put all this effort into maintaining the lagoon and trying to make it better. And now we're looking to destroy the whole thing with a big corporation that wants to put a marina in. I'm heartbroken. And I don't know how effective our concerns will be in terms of making somebody consider this decision, but I just don't want to see all this effort going into saving it and just turn around and totally destroy it. We've been worried about boats being in the lagoon, I guess, since we were kids and we saw all the boats, and now it's just that much worse and that much more difficult to deal with. So, I'll just be one of your brief commenters, but I just really hope that this is seen as the tragedy it is to the lagoon.
Thank you, Andra. Anyone else signed up, Lucy?
That was it for our signed up speakers, but Jeff has his hand up.
Okay, Mr. Dubard, you're up.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for hearing me. I first just want to say that obviously one particular building there, I'm attached to the Burt's Boatyard building, building 7, that despite not necessarily having historic significance, does have significance that would make it really appropriate to be on Beach Road, the DeSorcy sites that I'll be closing on next week. So I will say that the folks from Safe Harbor, and I know that they are large on a corporate level, but Chris Scott and his team, who I've dealt with regularly, are Islanders. They are the ones who are there day in and day out and are doing good things and are conscientious about it. So I hope that, there are balanced solutions to our problems, this being one of them. Maybe there's a phased solution. I've just ordered an electric boat that I'll take delivery on next week. Next year, maybe we look at whether some of those slips can be reserved for and equipped so that electric boats can be served. And then in terms of cleaning up our waterways, we need to be considering these short-term solutions, but also, how are we using land bank? The land bank could potentially contribute to cleaning up places like Lagoon Pond. So I certainly want to just speak up on behalf of my experience with these guys being one of responsibility. And in terms of at least the first phase of it, or some aspect of it, allowing us to relocate that building. I hope we can do so. Thanks.
Jeff, could you confirm, assuming that this DRI is approved, or assuming that in some way the applicant gets permission to remove that building since they apparently don't want to use it, is it your firm plan to move it to the location and take possession of it, and that's your deal with them?
It is my deal with them, and the only thing that is pending is your approval. I believe that, and I'll share it again, but I believe that there is actually an initial site plan as to where I plan to put it on Beach Road. I do have a location where, in the interim, if need be, I can keep it. That is between Lagoon Pond and Beach Road. And again, the building, as you guys may know, I shared some of this information, but it was Bert's boat shop. Erford Burt moved it from North Tisbury down there. He moved it in pieces, but it was at the same era when all of the other buildings that sit on Beach Road, on the sites that I will own, sit. He worked for the Martha's Vineyard shipbuilding company, which sat there. He was responsible for designing the Vineyard 15. It is really only appropriate that it be moved and sit on that site with so many other aspects of our boat building and maritime related community. So I'm excited for it, and that, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, it's where it belongs.
Okay, thank you. Lucy, is there any other member of the public indicating a desire to testify about this application?
So just a reminder to the public, you can raise your hand, you can turn on your video and wave. It's under the reactions tab. If you want to raise it virtually, you can reach out to me in the chat. Or if none of that works, you can just unmute. Andra has her hand up again.
Unmute, Andra.
Yeah, I guess, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I guess my question is, with all the damage that it can't help, it can't help to have this damage. Is there a benefit that the lagoon gets out of this, or what's the plus? Like, what's the reasons that would make us want to consider this?
Well, we can't answer that because we are just taking testimony now and receiving evidence, and we have to deliberate on the benefits and detriments of the proposed modification. So you might
Is
get,
there somebody that can answer that, or is that for a different?
applicant will probably have an opportunity to do that. He will certainly have an opportunity to speak tonight, or he may wish to keep his powder dry and testify and make a closing statement next. That will be up to Chris Scott, who is on this. But one way or the other, there will be discussion of benefits and detriments of this proposal during the deliberation. And I'm sure the applicant believes there are some benefits and will identify them. I think if you look at the narrative and his answers to questions, there's a very extensive public record. You might be able to glean some of the applicant's thoughts on that. Chris Scott, you don't have to answer that now, or you can respond now, or you can really respond the next time. I know you're here. You wouldn't want to miss this. There you are. No, no. Where is it? There you are.
Hi, sorry, my video's not working. You guys got me?
Yeah, we got you.
All right, great. Yeah, I would say that, yes, a lot of the benefits that we are proposing are part of the public comment at this point. And I would say that definitely be beneficial reading all of that at this time. And I know we got our stuff in late yesterday, so I think it's worth reading. So, and I apologize for getting it in late, frankly, so.
It's okay, and you're not the first applicant has done it, but it does require us to continue the public hearing. So it would.
Hey, Doug, we've got a couple other people with hands up if you.
Well, let me just say to Chris, it would probably be good for you in your closing statement because the applicant always gets the last word, to identify what you believe the benefits are to the lagoon. Because that was what Ms. Minio's question was, and it would be to your benefit to educate us about that. Okay, now, are there people who haven't testified before who wish to?
Yes, there's at least one.
Okay, let us take that person. We are.
So it's a couple under the name of Louis Dweck. Sorry
Okay.
again if I'm saying that wrong.
Okay. If you could, whoever's going to testify, tell us your name and go to it.
This is Ralph Dweck, and I'm Louis Dweck. We started coming to the Vineyard in 1976. So we've been coming for many years. We ultimately, I guess we moved to the lagoon about 35 years ago when I was pregnant with our first child. And we've lived there throughout the summers. And it has been a tremendous enhancement, in our lives. In that period of time, the amount of traffic has increased really enormously just in the lagoon, because we're towards the end and people come down there and then they turn their boat around and then they water ski back out in the direction, out. And it's gotten noisy. It's gotten to the point where, we wouldn't dare swim across the lagoon anymore, which was something, we all used to do. We would not dare to do that now. It would be extremely dangerous. Our children, we put out there a sort of like a raft out there for our kids, like a swim platform for our grandchildren to swim to. And there's so many boats that even a swim platform relatively close to the land was not a place for them to be. It has, the traffic, it's like there's traffic now. We also, in that area, there's the Martha's Vineyard Museum, which I think is quite beautiful. and a wonderful job was done. However, it's getting to be an area of the island, where cars just come up and back, come up and back. Cars are coming up to the place to get your boats. People are coming up to go to the museum. It's a traffic area now where people drive very quickly up and back on the road there. And really we have a boat, and we don't even take it out nearly as much as we used to, because we literally do not feel safe driving the boat the way we used to feel about driving the boat out into the ocean. It's a very, very different situation now than it was, 35 years ago. And I don't even think I mentioned this. I started coming to the Vineyard in 1955 when I was a little girl with my family. So it's a place that we have loved and enjoyed. And I sort of think that the area where we live, is not given sort of the same amount. It doesn't have the same amount of a voice that other areas of the island have. It's always been a place where there's been a wonderful mix of people, little houses, not so little houses. It's sort of a working class group. Some, people live there, and I sort of feel as if that's kind of taken advantage of in some way, and why, this wouldn't happen in another area of the Vineyard. And I personally feel so distressed about this, that we can't use it the way we used to use it. And the idea of there being 30 more boats, it feels catastrophic. And it's not that, I know, it's not in my backyard kind of a thing, but we're not just being like, well, we have our house, we don't want anyone else to have their house. It's the culture is just changing there. It's commercial. It's just a commercial end of town. It's just not good, but mostly it's the safety. And we are so careful about how we have used the waters there. Also, I just thought of this. We wanted to have a dock, and that was maybe 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And it was explained to us that they really didn't want us to have a dock because it stops the way the water moves in and out of the lagoon. And so, we didn't fight it. We said, okay, we don't want to do anything. We wanted a dock, but we didn't want to do anything that was going to hinder, again, the movement of the water going in and out of the lagoon. And the more docks you have, the more it hinders the movement, and affects, the things that live in the water. So I just hope with all my heart, I really hope that, there is a place where people can boat. I'm sure that people could, there are other places. This, do we really need to build up that area even more, and make it more congested, more fast moving traffic, more fast moving boats? It's just not Martha's Vineyard. It's losing the whole flavor of the place. I feel very strongly about it. And I'm grateful to you all who sit there, listen, and try to figure out what's the wisest thing to do. And I don't want to overtalk it, but it feels very emotional to me, that this is being sort of, I feel like it may be treated in a cavalier way. My husband just wants to say, this is Ralph Dweck.
I just want to say that I agree with people who said before about the quality of the water, and with more boats that may deteriorate. And that's something that concerns both of us. So we agree with the comments that were made on that subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Lucy, is there anyone else who hasn't testified who has indicated they wish to?
Not that I'm seeing, Doug.
Okay, Larry Glix has his hand up. Larry, you've testified and it's getting late. If you have something to say, can you say it in about a minute?
Yes, I just want to clarify one thing that I said, which is I am not opposed to safe harbors coming in, putting up new buildings, having better practices. I'm against expansion. There has to be some middle ground of improving practices and facilities. That doesn't mean we have to allow them to have more boats polluting and endangering people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry.
Doug, I can't find my hand icon, but it's Tom Zeno. I'd like to testify.
Okay, go ahead, Tom.
I am a boater, been a boater for most of my life, mostly in Lagoon Pond for probably the past 40 years. And I see all the boat traffic in and out, and traffic has increased greatly. The increase of boats that safe harbor would add to the lagoon, adds a new problem. And it's the management of the lagoon as far as boats in and out of it, speed. You look at Lake Tajmu and you see the amount of boats that are in there in the summertime. And the one good thing about Lake Tajmu is there is a no wake zone. So any increase of more boats in the lagoon needs to have some management of the lagoon as far as in the complications of it being in two towns. It would have to be for both towns to work together to be able to manage the boats coming in and the speed of the lagoon, and picking a zone and keeping a no wake zone at least down probably to Madeiras Cove, and maybe further than that, or a speed limit in there. There needs to be something that when you're getting more volume as far as boats in there, that people can keep the speed down, because besides the wave action that happens with the boats and all the storms and the tidal rise that we're getting now, I'm seeing a lot more damage on the banks of the lagoon. There's a lot of damage to the sides of it from the water action, from the rising tides, and from the amount of storms we're getting. And we have a lot of bacteria in the lagoon in the summertime, and all of these things are adding up. And, you know, we're seeing the degradation of the water quality from multiple sources. So it's a complicated problem, and it's something that you need to consider all these different things when you are considering something like an expansion like this. That if any expansion happens, even now, we probably should have the speed zones within the lagoon, or no wake zones, especially at the beginning of the lagoon. There's lots of boats coming in. There's lots more boats that have been bought during the pandemic, and new people who are using boats. And I know you've heard other people saying that, you know, people don't know what they're doing, and that's true. You go on on a boat, any place around the Vineyard in the summertime on weekends, and it's kind of dangerous sometimes. You know, you try to pick and choose your times. So that's all I'm going to say, but, you know, you be very conscious of what you're doing. And if you are going to put conditions on anything, make sure it covers all these different issues. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tom. I have to point out that we have no authority or jurisdiction over boat traffic within the lagoon. That is something that would be up to the state or the towns. We can only regulate the particular application that is before us. But that doesn't mean that you haven't raised an important point. Hopefully those with authority can address it. Anyone else, Lucy?
I'm not seeing anybody, Doug.
Okay, I'm going to continue this public hearing before somebody else raises their hand. because there's still one more applicant who doesn't have much time left. When are we continuing this to, Alex? So that the
November 3rd.
we'll continue the public hearing to November the 3rd. And anyone who wishes to testify then about the materials that were just submitted, feel free to do so. And Chris Scott, you will have an opportunity to make a closing statement. Just so you know, the applicant always gets the last word. So it's continued to November the 3rd, 2022. One more, guys, one more.
Doug, before you start, I'm just gonna say that I'm recused from this last one.
Got it. Okay, Ben is recused from Still Point Meadows.
I am also, this is Jim. I'm also recused from this one.
Okay. All right, where's my Still Point Meadows pile? Goodness, here it is. We don't have much time. Alex, would you please review what has been added to the record since the September 8th session of this public hearing? And then, as I promised, at the end of the September 8th session, after Alex identifies new materials, Mr. Bennett will have an opportunity to speak, and then we will move on from there. I promised Tom that last time. Go ahead.
Okay, so since September 8th, there have also been 2 site visits where a number of commissioners looked around the site. Just a reminder, this is a modification to a previous subdivision approval from 98, I believe. The 88, the properties in question here are these 4 in red, totaling about 13 acres. Those will be purchased by, have been purchased by Still Point Meadows, the local nonprofit. So new material sent September 8th includes response to commissioner and staff questions. That includes a more refined list of usage categories for the proposed barn and outdoor areas around the barn. I'll show those in the next slide. And then clarifications about limitation on amplified music. The limitation would be between 9 p.m. and 9 a.m. The applicant points out that the town bylaw is between 10 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. So that would be a smaller window than allowed by the town. We have an official mission statement, which also helps to sort of set a foundation for what types of activities will be taking place here. Clarification that this is not intended as an entertainment venue, but as an educational venue, and that seasonal events will be allowed. A little bit more information about what type of outdoor uses there will be, and then clarification that uses within the protection area of the public well would not be allowed. Also questions about employee housing, the number and role of employees. All new employees would be, I believe they're all intended to be administrative staff to help with the planning and carrying out of activities and events. The applicant intends only to hire people who already have housing and that live on the island, or if they don't live on the island, would have housing when they're here. We also have some clarifications to material that was previously submitted. In terms of traffic projections, the traffic planners or traffic engineers, VHB, clarified that there are projections for peak traffic, peak hour traffic of about 58 vehicles in the evening. Assumes 2 people per vehicle, so that that's how they account for the possibility of 100-person events in the evening. More information about the outdoor uses. The applicant stated that there would be small canopies. They clarified there might be like 3 small tents like you see at a farmer's market. There'd also be gardening and walking and that sort of thing. The applicant's no longer proposing a limitation on lots 4.9 and 4.13. 9 and 13. They previously proposed that those lots will be limited to only off-the-grid developments. the new proposal is that those lots will be limited to only 1,200 square feet of development each. That's clarified in their list of offers. And we have 11 new letters, bringing the total to about 38. The new letters include some from organizations, including Vineyard Conservation Society, which had questions about this off-grid limitation, which I believe the applicant has clarified. Also a letter from the Millbrook Watershed Management Committee, which developed a management plan for the watershed a few years ago. That's in the record. So just to go over some of the new information, the mission statement is shown here. So gathering place, those types of events. And then in terms of a list of uses with examples of each, that's shown here on the top. So community uses, classes, conversations, contemplation, and private events. So these first four would all fall under the Still Point mission. It's not clear whether private events would be limited to that type of event also, but they're proposing, fundraisers and weddings and things. So that would be sort of the wild card in terms of uses, but they have clarified what type of events those would be, and also proposed limitations on all of these activities, which are shown in the bottom. So inside the barn, there would be no more than 100 people. I believe that's a fire safety requirement. Again, no amplified music between 9 and 9. There would be no sale of alcohol. It's not quite clear yet if alcohol, I guess consumption would be allowed as part of these activities or the private events. The applicants proposed that any events with more than 80 people would be limited to only twice a week in season and once a week in September to May. This is some other information that the applicant had provided previously or recently about the proposed uses. So the facility will be open 7 days, about 50 to 60 class-like activities a month. They provided information about peak summer activity, which would amount to about 24 events per week in the summer, according to the information that the applicant provided, and then off-season activity, which would amount to about 9 events per week in the off-season. So the new comments from the public are included here along with previous comments. This is broken down into letters of support and letters that were either opposed to the project or that raised concerns. I won't go through this in detail, but this presentation will be in the record so the commissioners can look at this as just a summary of common statements on either side. The supporting comments dealt mostly with the provision of educational and cultural opportunities on the island, wellness benefits, use of existing rural space, and concerns focused largely on impacts on the rural area as well, including abutters and wildlife. Clarification of future plans for the other Still Point lots, which have not been specified yet. Concerns related to the proposed septic system, whether the 3-bedroom septic system would be adequate for the proposed uses. Staff is currently looking at that. Also parking adequacy and other things listed here. So this will all be in the record for commissioners to look at. I'd encourage you to read the recent letters in the record as well. So that quick update.
Okay, thank you. Thomas.
Thank you, Doug. Can I just ask how much time we have so I can?
You have 10 minutes.
Right. I'm going to be very brief so you can hear from some of the board members who have attended twice now and not been able to speak. Can I share my screen, Lucy?
When I say you have 10 minutes, I mean, we have 10 minutes before we traditionally adjourn.
Right. So I'm going to take about 3 of those minutes so that you can hear from some other people, not just myself, if that's okay.
And you should be good to go.
Thank you. Okay, you can see the barn there.
Yep.
This is the mission boiled down to the basics so that you can all understand what we're trying to do here. And before I dive in, I just want to thank you all for this time tonight and for your service. Still Point will be a community space for classes, conversation, and contemplation. It really comes down to that. Community uses, classes such as, conversations such as, and contemplation such as. This is the list I made for you, Joan Malkin, when you asked for this last week. A community use might be a healing ceremony for Indigenous women. Classes might be such as a wooden decoy carving, and conversations such as what is the island's carrying capacity, or contemplation such as a meditation retreat. So that's what's happening at Still Point. And over the last couple of weeks, just want to pull my notes up, I have had a lot of conversations with the abutters, and we've been able to really identify their concerns and ways that we might address them. They seem to fall in two broad categories, the concerns. The conservationists are concerned with the amount of development, land clearing, and addition of nitrogen into the watershed. Still Point will place a development restriction on lots 4.9 and 4.13 that proposes a limit of 1,200 square feet of enclosed space on each of those two lots. We realized the language in the previous restriction with off the grid was too vague and it had no size restriction, so we changed that development restriction to make it really clear. We have no plans for large-scale land clearing, and we found a way to tuck all of our parking spaces in between existing trees, creating a wooded loop, much like Polly Hill's parking area.
What about lot 4.10?
Lot 410 has no restriction on it. And we will continue to add an approved denitrifying system that will be installed so that we are well under the MBC's nitrogen limits. So I really think we've addressed the bulk of the concerns from the conservationists that I've heard. The parking spots are only 43, but as you know from walking the property, we could easily fit another 20 cars on the side of our driveway if we needed it. I don't think we'll ever need that. The abutters are concerned with slightly different set of issues: noise, light, traffic, and they want to know what the roadside will look like. We have established this open dialogue with the abutters and are literally working with them on solutions right now. So in addition to the barn having a 100-person capacity, we've decided to limit those events with more than 80 people to no more than once a week, as Alex said, September through May and twice in the summer. And we'll be incorporating appropriate signage and traffic direction for ingress and egress. That'll all be considered. If we do have weddings, we're not sure we'll have weddings, but if we do have weddings, we will not allow outside amplified music or large outdoor tents. When speaking with the abutters, I realized they're not against somebody getting married at Still Point. They're against big tents, loud music late at night. So we have said that we would limit weddings with more than 80 people to only 4 per year. And then for all events, outside amplified music must end by 9 p.m. So other than the necessary maintenance and clearing for all the vegetation, for safety reasons on the roadside, that's the only change, is if we trim the bushes so we can see, more clearly when we leave Still Point, and the addition of a small Still Point sign. The other change to the roadside would be that we are happy to add a walking and a bike path if the town moves forward with their project. In closing, please know that our team is completely dedicated to work with our abutters and to address the concerns as we move forward and as the concerns come up. And before I answer questions, if it's okay with the commissioners, I'd just like you to meet some of the advisory board members and hear what they have to say about Still Point.
Sure, it's your time. Whatever you.
Great. We'll start with Dana. Are you on the call? On the meeting? If she's not here, we'll go with Eric Adams. Are you here, Eric?
I am, Thomas. Good evening, everybody. And I promise to be really brief. My name's Eric Adams. I'm a mental health clinician with a small private practice in Vineyard Haven. I worked for a number of years at community services, work with students in just about all the schools over the years. I read something recently that 90% of the people in this country feel that we have a mental health crisis going on to a large degree across the country. And I think that there's some truth to that. And one of the things that I'm really excited about at Still Point is it's a place to be able to provide psychoeducational classes to kids and adults about developing wellness practices and taking better care of themselves and learning life skills like anger management, decision-making, and conflict resolution, which are really vital to a safe, sound community where people feel connected. I work a lot with people with substance use disorder too, and there's a euphemism in the recovery world that says, I just blanked on what it is, that says, oh my goodness.
You know, that happens to me like several times.
It never happens to me.
Don't worry about it.
Well, I'll stop at that for now.
All right, thank you, Eric.
Yep.
Jake, did you want to say a few words?
Oh, I hadn't been planning on it, but I'm really excited about a couple of things at Still Point. One is to offer contemplative programs, including meditation retreats and meditation classes. And the other is to be involved in creating conversations that bring people together across divides to address the kind of divides that are in our community right now on the island and in our nation and our world. I just really want a space to bring people together. And I think Still Point provides an ideal opportunity for that. And I've been working closely with Thomas on using that same philosophy to try and bring people together around this project, whether it's abutters or various other concerned parties. We've really been trying to use that same philosophy of bringing people together so that any concerns that come up are really opportunities for us to grow together as a community, putting this project together. And I just want to emphasize that in putting Still Point together as a project, including bringing in other revenue through private events, the aim here is to provide a public benefit, to allow this beautiful natural space to be available, and these classes like Eric was speaking to be available to a wider swath of people than would otherwise be if it was just for private residences. So that's really, I know, part of Thomas's intention, and it's part of my intention and working for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. Scott, did you want to say a couple words?
Hi, everyone. My name's Scott Fish, and just for transparency purposes, I want to let you know that I am on the board of Still Point, something that I'm very proud to be a part of. I just think this is such a unique opportunity. I mean, to build up the community without needing to build really much. The structure is there, the place is there. It's located in the middle of this beautiful island. And I think the opportunity to just bring us all together, to expose ourselves to different, peoples on this island with different opinions in a world where, everyone hides behind a screen, everyone hides behind a tweet. This really is just a way to counteract that trend in our society and bring us all together. So I'm just, honored to be a part of it. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Scott. Chris Murphy has been advising me. He's not on our board, but Chris, did you want to say a few words?
I'm happy to, but I think we're right up against the commission's time frame. So I've got to go back to Doug and see what he wants to do.
Okay.
Well, I would entertain, I don't think you've got probably a lot more board members who you want to speak. I'd certainly entertain a motion to extend our time by 5 minutes.
So moved.
I always want to hear from Chris Murphy. We know that. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
That motion.
We got 5 minutes. 5 more minutes.
Okay, thank you, Doug. All right, I'm going to read you a brief letter because I don't know how else to do this. I'm here to support the Still Point proposed changes to the original DRI. I've read the letters in the file, listened to the hearing, and I think Thomas Bennett's plan to rethink the approved DRI, putting most of the lots into conservation and severely limiting the use of the remaining 4 lots is a wonderful plan. It goes a long way toward mitigating the adverse impacts of the original DRI. The plan approved by the town and the Martha's Vineyard Commission. The plan, as approved, would have allowed at least 12 more homes with attendant guest houses, tennis courts, swimming pools, lawn and septic, all that stuff. As at least 12 acres of woods would have been cleared, and the runoff from those lawns and septic systems would have been going into the watershed and eventually into Tisbury Great Pond. Man, when this DRI was originally approved, no one had the foresight or the will to even try to further reduce the impact on the watershed and Tisbury Great Pond. Instead of coming to you, as so many developers do, trying to maximize the financial viability of a project, Thomas Benna is here with a plan that has already vastly improved what the commission and the town already approved, helping to put into permanent conservation most of the land into permanent conservation and vastly reducing the impact of the remainder on the watershed and on Tisbury Great Pond. Thomas's proposal is a gift to all of us, but there is still a mortgage to pay and operating costs to cover. By allowing the proposed change of use of the existing barn, you allow the proposal to move forward in a good way to fill a need in our growing community. I urge you to approve the proposed change to the existing DRI. Thank you. And thank you, Doug.
Sure thing. Thomas, you got 3 more minutes.
All right. I see Mr. Reardon, who has been here a couple meetings now. Bob, did you want to say a few words?
Be happy to, Thomas. I'm Bob Reardon. I'm a trustee for the Martha's Vineyard Diversity Coalition and also part of the leadership team with my good friend Eric Adams for the Martha's Vineyard Black Lives Matter movement. We're involved so often in intense dialogue, sometimes confrontational, sometimes bridge building. Some of the difficulties that our island community faces that we attempt to negotiate together in good space and in good conversation that hopefully moves forward and eliminates some of the barriers that we too often fail to confront on our precious island. When I walked the property last fall with Thomas Benna, what impressed me was what an unbelievable, neutral, encouraging space this barn and its surrounds are represented for holding sometimes difficult, sometimes confrontational discussions. And I was just uplifted in my envisioning of the possibilities that this property could represent. And on top of that, what Thomas has done is brought great respect to the environment, to the surroundings, and to how his vision for the use of this can work not only for the betterment of the community, but as well for the betterment of the environment. So I am excited and pleased to be able to support this project.
Thank you, Bob. Doug, do you have time to hear from the immediate abutters, Banker and Anna, who are on the call? This is their second time joining us also.
Well, we're going to be, this is going to be continued. If these folks cannot testify next time, it's been a long night.
Yeah.
Can they come back next time? I don't mean to be at all to the abutter. I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, we're happy to come back.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. It's been a long night, and I've got 16 other people who would like to go home. Okay, I'm going to.
Can I ask Thomas a question just before? Thomas, I looked at your offers, and you mentioned a couple of limitations on weddings and other things. Since the hearing is going to be open, we would like to talk to you just about expanding some of the offers and some of the commitments you made so that we can address those things. Thanks.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you.
So you'll be talking with Adam and Alex about that before. And what is the magic date for this, Alex?
This would also have to be November 3rd.
Okay. I'm continuing this public hearing to November the 3rd, 2022. Any members of the public who didn't testify tonight, including Mr. and Mrs. Fitch, please show up on the 3rd and give us your thoughts.
Alex, can you also put them first? I mean, they've waited enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That'd be fine. And that's it for tonight. And I'll turn this back to the chair.
Thank you.
You got to unmute to say we're done.
I was going to tell you that I have nothing to add other than to say I will see the commissioners next Thursday night. In fact, I'll see you tomorrow at 11 o'clock. And good night. And thank you all for your patience. These nights are very long. But by hook or by crook, you get through them. So thank you for your patience. Good night.
Good night, and thank you all for coming. It's interesting and useful and makes us expand our own thinking too.
Thanks, Christina.
Yeah.
I remember my euphemism.
What was that?
The anecdote for addiction is connection. And I think that's the same with a lot of the things that plague us, is the connection with others. I wouldn't have been able to sleep if I didn't get that out. So thank you all for listening.
Will you be back on November 3rd?
I will try to be, for sure.
Okay, I'll make a
Okay.
note that we'll
Awesome.
finish that out on the record too.
Great, thank you.
No problem. Good night, everybody.
Night, Lucy.
See ya.